Well, hello everybody, and welcome to a new edition of our sometimes almost weekly show called the In World Review. This is where we have a look at design and building and arts and entertainment and all sorts of things, mostly on the OpenSim platform, which is like a distant cousin of Second Life, which many of you have heard of. We appear here as avatars, and most of the work involved is in avatars too, but we do expand our reach into other friendly virtual worlds and projects, so to speak. So, a bit of news from High Fidelity sometimes, and Sciencebase, and some of our other friends out there. But there's far too many people launching their own M words at the moment to possibly keep up, except with the old guard, so to speak. And it's actually amazing when you actually consider that Sandbox and Decentraland are in so much trouble this week. And at best, they only ever had 1,000 viewers. These they're users. They're not the big things that they've been hailed as. And now they're not hailing them anymore. They're even less big. So stick with the worlds like this that are like 15 to 20 years old and work properly, and have upgraded, in case you're asking. Anyway, enough of that. So I'm not here to talk about my views today. I'm here to talk to our safaris and guests and stuff like that. Joining me in the studio is none other than my colleague on all these things, who's also operating cameras. It's James Outloud. Welcome, James.
Well, hi Mel, good to see you again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I saw you.
I
It
think
was,
about
it was
half an hour ago, right?
yeah, exactly. Not long ago at all. My name, of course, is Mal Burns, but everybody knew that, didn't they?
hmm
And a guest today, sitting next to me, is Leah Lobo. Welcome, Leah.
Hey, thank you. Welcome.
Yes. Well, we're going to have fun with you. We always do. Now, actually, I should point out before we do anything else that back in the day, when we were doing an older series of In World Review, both the Canadian Grid and on the Meta World Grid, which was the self-hosted one, I had an NPC, a non-player character version of Leo, and I we sometimes sat her down just to fill the spaces, didn't we? Or we had you off the,
Awesome.
yeah, I remember you
Oh
posed for
yeah.
it, and we had our Lear in residence, so I could always put you in a seat to pose for something, even though you weren't really here. But oddly enough, you always look this amazing picture. I think it's the same hair, the same hat, the same costume. It's a very distinct. It's a very well, like me. It's a very once you get used to it, very distinctive look, and you could almost be that NPC on the post board even now, but you're not. You're live, and you're with us in the flesh. We have an awful lot to talk to you about. So I was racking my bones before the show, and I thought, well, if I've got pictures of this and pictures of that, if we've got enough. And then I thought, well, come on, it's Leah. We can go all day if we need to. Right. So we've been preparing a bit of things here, which is, well, but if those are expecting us to be on air at noon, you'll notice it's more like noon 30 now, but that's what happens when you've got extra things to do. We're ready to go now, though, and we'll be talking to Leah in a short while about everything. I don't know whether we're going to get Thursday Member to join us, but we traditionally tend to start this show with a bit of highlights from the Hypergrid Safari that would have happened in the previous week. And I'm actually going to do that now. Um, some of these are silent, some of them aren't. So I'm going to have to find out. But we well, we went to visit some rather interesting places completely. So I'm going to let the film talk for itself and talk over it. Yes, this is silent, I think. Um, right. I've forgotten. I forgot. I should have checked this. Um, Sorry, I'm just going to let that play. And I'm just going to show the web here. This is a web page from Sesrambo. It's HD Safari, blogspot.com. So hgsafari.blogspot.com. And yeah, here we are. Uh, Ubit, and I'm trying to think of the other. Okay, the first stop was with Ubit, who's a developer on OpenSim, and it was very much. Okay, so you're hearing some of the video behind me. Anyway, it's a long talk here, and she's recorded it with Ubits. And okay, this is the creation of Hypergrid Hell. What? Okay, I don't know what to actually call this. What the name of the grid was. Okay, there's 104 landmarks.
Nice to see you.
On it. It's the alternative metaverse grid anyway. It's part of OpenSim, and this seems to be a sort of region based on, well, hell, for want of a better word. So I'm going to put that away, and then we can actually watch some of the video. As you can see, some bits talk more than others. The crowd of people you see here are the people who attend Safari, really. I'm lurking in there somewhere. You saw me a minute ago, actually. And, you know, I usually just take a bit of camera footage from the, each Safari to see what we've got. This one did quite appeal to me, though. It did remind me of another place we'd actually been. And, of course, I think it was filmed rather than an actual place in Second Life. They had, was it Dante's Inferno or something? You know, had the bit.
Into the spectral realm.
Yeah, that's what I think it is.
Yeah.
As you can see, is very different from hell.
Right, yeah, we moved from hell to the spectral realm, to be honest. Equally spooky to me.
Yeah, that's Desideria Stockton and the Literature Alive. That she's the one who did all those builds. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, right, okay. Yeah, we haven't got, I mean, I filmed these to actually talk over them, so we don't get much sound on them, but she was sort of explaining a fair old bit as we went along.
Yeah, students read the story and then enact it in these settings that you're depicting right now on camera. It's awesome.
I absolutely love this build. It's so imaginative. You know?
Bit colourful and out of place, isn't he? No role play there. It's funny watching Safari. People turn up in all sorts of goats.
This area was designed to be underground and part of hell. This is part of the spectral realm of ghosts and spirits. Says Chris. Please feel free at any minute.
If you wonder why the voice is sometimes cut out, it's because my camera went out of voice range. I hadn't really. It was improvised. I hadn't set it up fully.
Oh, but it's well done. I feel like I'm there. I was just with the creator of this at a conference a couple months ago.
Coincidence. Well, it's not a coincidence at all. If any had been, you were managed to be there whether you were there or not, if you see what I mean. Oh,
yes, he was running a session that said, our virtual world's dead. And of course I was saying, no.
Look at this. Yeah, there's this funny light that sort of you get the camera caught in the light and it gets a bit weird. I think it's like invisible things your camera gets stuck on. Gotta admit, this bit is the antithesis of hell, I guess. Oh, we're on totally different clips here, by the way. They're seamlessly joined up. But they're all adjacent regions, all these clips as we go. So that's meant to look like that. I was a bit disturbed. I thought I was losing textures.
No, it's just way too much glow between you and me.
Yeah.
I like to limit my glow a little bit, make it subtle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not something you can easily modify. It's not like Winlight where you can just change immediately at the click of the switch. Oh, there's a hole. There was a hole in the ground something fell into there. What's new in OpenSim, we say.
Kind of racetrack.
There's of course. Oh, and Humble Tim there who keeps avatar.
Movie theater. There's so much at Raceway. So if you want to see more of McCracken's builds, definitely do look those up. He also has his home region called Illusions that you can check out. It's open to all. Good night, Light. Where's God in heaven? Oh, there's his throne. You see God's throne up here? Up on that high mountain with all the light. I just love how he did. This is just, it really feels like heaven. We did an angel party here one day. We're gonna have to do a demon's party in hell. This is beautiful here.
Yeah, very well built. And oh, in the same place, different clip, mind you. There she is again, guiding us around. A little trick here I use sometimes when I'm doing this, I option click on whoever's hosting this for us, so we end up following them around on camera. And this is what happens when I option click on our host and she suddenly decides, oh, I'm going to stop walking. I end up having to pan around and around while she doesn't
Reiki
move.
can be done on an entire country. But typically, when you do a Reiki healing, you do it one-on-one, and not really hands-on, but hands-over kind of thing. Energy is brought up through your chakras, through your body, and sent out to a person who is intended to receive it. We try to get permission from whoever it is before we send the energy to. And the Reiki finds where it needs to go to do its healing within them. But it can be done in a whole group. It can be done in a group that has people that are 1,000 miles away, 50 miles away. You know, one in England, one in you know, Spain. It doesn't matter. They all feel it. And when I did that with my group, the seed, and there were people scattered all over the world, they all felt it. Everyone in the room felt it. So I have to say, yes, it worked long distance, and yes, it works in groups. So this is where I start by teaching chakra awareness. What are your chakras? They're focal points of energy in your body, and they fine-tune energy and send it to different places in your body.
This is a great bit of the build,
And,
actually.
each one has connections to various organs, to various different types of emotion, different types of things that you go through in your life. And I use my nursing skills along with my chakra awareness skills, that on a level people can physically relate to feeling it emotionally. So I decided to move this building from Corfon and put it here, and I put a Reiki skybox up here.
Right, I think we might have another silent one. We landed on this sort of psychedelic land, not landscape, but just the land itself. Very rich on texture. I mean, if you want to imagine some completely alien planet, that's it. But we manoeuvred our way. This actually happens before the scene that we just saw, because we move into that very colourful and bright environment. I love that, it's a bit of art, a bit of thing, really. It's scared of it. And this, of course, is far removed from the other parts of build, the hell stuff. All this is on the alternate metaverse grid, I think they're called. I haven't got anything in front of me that tells me the exact title, but I think. We followed the link to the place we were taken, which was about 24 regions we were given landmarks to, and that's only a fraction of what's on the whole grid. So it's a big grid, the alternate metaverse grid, and it's on OpenSim, of course, so you can teleport over there from anywhere else on OpenSim, the hypergrid. Yeah, this is the landscape just in front of us here, which we saw a bit of previously. I took rather a liking to that, or some colourful foliage and things. So bright primary colours in places, and just a few bits I couldn't res in time, but not really surprising when you look at that. And you're doing it live, so you can't just go there and wait for everything to res. You're following everybody else as we walk around. But it's nifty, I thought. I thoroughly enjoy myself when I'm doing camera like this. I mean, it's not super professional, but you just whirl around, picking up stuff. And the fact it's silent means, it doesn't mean Matty talk over it and stuff. Yeah, it was difficult keeping up with the host here, especially when I came out of camera mode. And I thought, where's she gone? Okay, I think we're nearing the end of, we're nearing the end of this one now. About a minute here to go. But thoroughly enjoyed this, as you can probably imagine. It was, great safari. And this was all in the hour, the second hour. The first hour, as I mentioned when we were looking at the website, was Ubit, who's, I can never remember his second name. He's one of the developers of OpenSim, and
Ubit Umarov.
Yeah,
that's right. One of our core devs.
Yeah, it was very much a Q&A, so he sat us down and whatever, but it was also in text, so there was no, there's no visuals, theatrics for us to show really. But it's quite interesting, some different people commenting on different things and versions of OpenSim and the difference between different physics types and things like that. A bit technical for some people, mind you. Okay, so I'm going to pause it there because that is the end of that one. We have one more clip to come, but I'm going to hold that back for a minute. Okay, just before we do anything else, I will now just quickly pop back into the web page because I can. Right. Cataplexa was the host there, and we had 104 landmarks, which we could not possibly get to all of them. Right, they were having there was a big discussion about problems with embedded landmarks on note cards, which apparently are not working at all well these days. If you save the landmark to your landmarks folder, it's perfectly usable, but not when it's printed on a in-world note card. Don't ask me why. It seems to corrupt the string and includes an @ symbol. Like you get an email which doesn't work. No, I agree. Anyway, as you can see from Thursday's sort of mini GIFs here, she takes a lot of these other ones, pretty much the same scenes I've run through already. A lot of what she includes here is, of course, the chat, including what Ubit was saying for the most part. So this blog post of this is sort of keeps you up to date, even though you really all you can do is read the chat log really, and we're actually on the second stop now, but at the top of the page, we've got. I shall actually run to the top of the page again. It's basically the conversation with you bit here. You can see who asked the questions, and you can see what the answers were. Anyway, right. So I think we can leave it at that. And oh yeah, I'm going to move back in World briefly. I'm going to get James complaining at me. I'm going to go to one of our screens here, not the main one, but while I'm at it, because we were talking about this, I'm just running Thursday slideshow. You've seen this on previous shows, but it's just the Open Sim Festival is coming up in July, so not that long now. I think it's near the end of July, and apparently the a building and stuff is underway. 17 regions, 142 parcels. There might even be more by now, for all I know. This is a few weeks old. Oh, here we are, July the 8th to 25th. So it's just over a week. It's about 10 days. You can get to their channel on Discord too. I'll just freeze it there for a minute if anybody needs to write down that Discord link. You have to make sure you've got the right capitals and lower cases there for Discord links. Discord GG HQMQVPR5KW. Okay, moving on. 77 hours of entertainment have already been booked. 13 slots still available, but they were there anyway. A third of the exhibits have been reserved. More space still there if you need it. And it's a 17-day event, medieval fantasy theme, sci-fi and role-player welcome. And this, when it raises the, well, this is their calendar, as it were. Closing date, July 25th, and opening date is July the 8th. All the rest is just, you know, testers and traders and stuff like that. And that's that one, all done and out of the way. So we're back to, got that out of the way now. Okay, and I'm going to close that web page for now. Freezers on that video. Right, okay. Well, time to move on to our guest of honor, so to speak, Leah Lobo. I'm fascinated. It's just so typical. We were showing some clips there, and oh yes, you knew immediately who the people were, but even more than I did. Then I was there a few days ago. So,
Well, I didn't know who was doing the chakras, so that's great.
oh yeah, yeah, cataplexia, is it?
I do know her. I
Yeah.
just didn't realize she had that. That's wonderful.
Al,
Yeah,
could
so
you click on your avatar again to center your view?
Oh yes, exactly. The moment I start clicking something, my head goes away.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
Thank
James.
you. Thank you.
No, this is the fun and games of a live show, isn't it? Sorry, my head's crooked. I'm looking the wrong way. How dare you? You're meant to look into the camera. Yeah. If I'm not careful, my mic will fall off, or I'll lose my hat. Well, where would I be then? Right. Looking better, probably. Never mind. I need to lose the mask, but then people would realise that my mesh mouse doesn't move. See, it's all very convenient. Having an excuse to wear a black mask to hide the fact I don't have lip movement. Oh, so great fun. It is a problem for some mesh avatars that are complete meshes, if you see what I mean. Anyway, right. Yeah. So, where do I really start? I'll start. Why not? I ran this video at the end of MBTV News earlier, actually, as a sort of little advert, but it's one that it gave me prior to this show, and I'd never seen it before, so I was super pleased to see it. And yeah, we got the middle screen up. This is really about the Harmony Ikagi project, which is actually an app. So you'll notice that you've got the open sim feel to it and everything else, although the app itself, of course, is for Oculus. But we'll get to that in a minute with Leah. First of all, I'll show you this wonderful little clip, which is, well, just wonderful. Well, there we go. And now I think you can. I guess you can tell all. Actually, I'll just rewind it a bit so we've got a still shot for the end there on the. Oops, up on the screen while we're. Oops, wrong one.
Yeah, we would.
There you go. There's the credits.
Oh, yeah, they flash in and then they go again.
And then they go, that's okay. That was the Farm Family and the Virtual Harmony team. Compliments of Andy Stricker, Spinoza Quinnell, who made the film.
All right. Now, if you're wondering about the squared off look to these frames, of course, that is the. Whoops. That is the. There, finally, there we are. Right, that squared off look, of course, is the format you get when you're wearing an Oculus headset. We're used to widescreen video, and then if you use your iPhone for taking videos, they tend to be portrait format, and they look pretty awful. And then in the halfway point, you've got the Oculus frame, as it were. So it's just not an old-fashioned video. It's actually a genuine video of the Oculus environment. But did Spinoza actually did the filming of that? Did he?
Yes, he did, and he did the design of the port from OpenSim to Unity to the Oculus Quest 2.
Right. So he presumably had a camera in the Oculus set, so he was filming inside.
It allows you to capture from inside, and you can hook your device to a PC and integrate the two. In fact, I'll show you a slide of that in just a moment.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Well, I'm going to dive straight into the slides because. Is this app available for people with Oculus sets now?
Well, it's not available right now. No, it's in beta testing. What we did was we created it to study how to support multiplayer use in virtual reality and how to strengthen our work in OpenSim. So think of it as a proof of concept that taught us a lot about content, compression algorithms, how to get really quality content in both worlds, and what are the strengths of OpenSim that we can help to share with the world.
I've actually seen quite a few, instances. I mean, we've seen them at conference and things where people have actually built things in OpenSim and then ported them, into sort of web worlds and things like that. I always think it's a bit of a shame because you look at things and you think, oh, that's more or less a stripped down OpenSim, and I think, oh, what a pity it's stripped down, But certainly, I don't know about the film quality, but it looked to me like the builds themselves had pretty good resolution in the headset, as opposed to the camera that was filming it. They looked like they had the full spectrum of the sort of you have fountains in there, for example, and the typical OpenSim Second Life landscape sort of thing, and it looked fairly rich. Was it? I mean, having not been in it.
Andy created the mesh in OpenSim first, using a Mac, I think, for much of it, like Cheetah 3D, Xhexagon, and some of those kinds of tools. And then he took some of that mesh and put it into Unity to package it and compress it and get it ready for the Oculus SDK, to bring it in. And we had to bring it in as a beta app so we could test and add features to it. You would really call it an alpha because it's not open to the public, and we keep modifying the product. The reason we're doing that is because we're testing for accessibility. We're testing for support for people who are seated while playing. We're also thinking about how tough is it to have spontaneous multiplayer, activities in these kinds of virtual reality spaces. See, one thing everyone seems to take for granted is how effortlessly we have met here today to talk and how hard that is to do in a virtual reality environment. I know there are apps that support it, this and that and the other, but you have to realize that if you have to have a staging area. Oculus recommends that you all come into like the tea house for us, and everyone gathers together, assembles their party, and then goes into the app together. That's not as serendipitous as what we're doing today, where you just call me up and say, "Hey, come on over."
Taxis on roofs, as they used to say.
hmm That's it.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean that's one of the main arguments with virtual reality, especially what I call Helmet Land. But also some of the other things on it's got to be quick and easy. And I know people complain about Second Life and OpenSim because you've got to download a viewer, then you've got to know how to log in and where and have an account and whatever. But once you've done that, the learning curve is a bit, but it's not too great. But once you've mastered it all, logging in, teleporting somewhere to attend something is child's play. Once you've learned all those basics,
hmm
But all these new platforms coming out, I go to one visit and I think, oh, keystrokes and controls that I'm used to don't work here. I've got to do a whole new learning thing. Nobody wants to do that. We want to. One thing I do like about comparing, say, Second Life and OpenSim is you get browsers like or viewers like Firestore who can address both. So although we don't have any true interoperability, between Second Life, which is a Linden Labs product, and OpenSim, which is literally open source, we do share a commonality in the viewer and the methodology of teleporting and all that stuff. So somebody can come from Second Life and understand OpenSim very easily, and of course vice versa. So there is, it's the starting point of protocols, if you see what I mean. But that even a starting point don't really seem to exist in this new world of, be it helmet apps or even, mesh worlds on the web or WebXR.
There was something at the AWE conference that you turned me
Yeah.
on to. I want to thank you for inviting me to register for AWE,
Oh yeah.
AW, the AR World Expo 2022, because they
Yeah.
were talking about holoporting. Speaking of
Oh yeah.
what you're, and how the
Yeah.
first holoporters went to the space station in September of 2021. First time that holograms of virtual avatars were holoported to be mingling with the crew on the space station. I thought that was very cool, and I got to talk to the Major General Joseph Schmidt, who was one of those surgeons who holoported.
Well,
He
I
was at
know.
the conference. He was supposed to be on the panel for NASA. He's a surgeon for NASA who supervises the health of the crew for the space flights. And
Yeah.
they're using a mix of what they call extended reality or virtual reality technology to support the health of the crew from a distance. And I'm fascinated with that subject. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you for that invitation.
Yeah. It was wonderful. Yeah. Well, you of course had the what was it, ILRN thing the same
Yes,
week.
I did. That was
It's
the
somebody like
Immersive
you.
Learning Research Network.
It's somebody
They
like you.
overlapped, and I felt so, ah, you know, I'm so obsessive. I must go to everything all at
Yeah.
once. Thank goodness for multiple monitors.
Yeah, I'm like that. You want to be at everything, and yeah, if you can, you can. I was at, yeah, I had to apologize on one of the safaris about a couple of weeks ago because I logged in to be on Safari, but I had to
Ah,
mute everything because I was also on a webcast as well. You
isn't
know,
that something?
well, I'm looking this way, then I'm just checking on the other way, and
That's awesome, though. That
yeah.
blended reality experience. Yes.
The fact that you can actually do it.
Mhm.
On Friday night, I went to a sort of private do thing prior to the exhibition opening. And I'm not used to going out late at night these days. We're getting on, And I was asked to go back last night, and that's going to be too much for me. I've got to do the main event on Tuesday anyway.
Mhm.
Um, but I suddenly realised, thanks to somebody there, I was actually able to go in with Zoom. So I did go back. I was there live on Friday, but I did go back yesterday, but I went back via Zoom. And of course, I could then show off a whole load of stuff too, but that was beside the point. I mean, the fact that that freedom of choice was there, the real life or the online version, or ideally, of course, a virtual version, not as it would work for this thing. So yeah, that it's not just multitasking; it's having so many different tools available, including the real world. Late at night, indeed. Right, let's move on from that then. Now, the other thing I was hoping, so looking forward to, given the format of this show now, we have slides and we have videos and things, was to get in to grab some silent footage like we were doing just a minute ago from Safari in Virtual Harmony, which of course is your definitely in Second Life project. But I gather that hasn't been online recently, and it's anything you want to
Until
say?
recently, that's correct. In March, a tornado took out the router, the lines, some of the farm items. You have to realize it's self-hosted in a farm at a farmhouse in Alabama by Spinoza Quinnell. And then we had a second tornado. They did. I'm in Colorado,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it took out some more equipment. And so we had to get new routers. We had a problem with the NAT loopback for those of you who do self-hosting,
Yeah.
and of course the IT folks had changed a little bit, and they were like, well, that's impossible to do. And we're like, no, we've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
And
Same
took
old
a while
story.
to get them all to work together and to find a very savvy technical engineer locally who could help us set up the hardware, not just the router, but the lines and everything. So, but we're back in business with some relief, right?
Yeah.
And of course, we're still beta testing the Oculus. We've met a couple of times in Virtual Harmony. We meet on weekends to do research, and of course, I've had 8 conferences in a row since April, so it's been wild.
I don't offhand recall when your birthday is, but I noticed you're on some feeds sort
Yep,
of
in May. Many
posting.
of us have May birthdays, so we all
Yeah.
celebrate at the same time. That's right.
But you had this post sort of, I'm still celebrating my birthday, even it
Oh,
going
you bet. At least a month. Anything
for
worth
a
doing
week.
is worth overdoing.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that was,
You bet.
yeah. Well, my birthday lasts 364 days, and I have one day off.
Awesome. Oh, I like that.
That's a good way to outlook on life, really, isn't it? Really, I suppose.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So it will be back you think it'll be back up and running as a destination on the hypergrid? So yeah, it is open
Well,
on the hypergrid normally, isn't it?
it's open on the hypergrid, but we do exercise a little bit of security because we partner with NASA and other groups for some of our research areas. So some of them are not as open as others. I guess that's a great way to say it. And then we run 18 grids, and some of you may be saying, no, she means regions. No, I mean grids.
Great.
And the reason we do that is we're running them on a Mac server. Now I say we, but Andy's doing all the work, right, Spinoza? And the grid architecture tends to perform more smoothly. We're on a server that has like 32 gigabytes of RAM. It's running Linux, of course, so it's not running
Yeah.
the Mac OS, in case people are wondering. And of course, we do a lot of mixed architecture. And then for special events that require scalability, like the Global Learning Forum or things like that, we will move everything up into the Amazon cloud. But we're not funded, so we try to kick it, low cost and and keep everything local whenever possible. So some of the grids are offline until we need them, right? They don't spin up automatically when you try to log into them. We have to actually do something on our end. But that way, I have a class grid for holding classes, and
Sure.
then we have some research grids. Then we have some party grids, I have to admit. And that's because ever since the pandemic, we realized we had to feed our own spirits, not just conduct research and think
Yeah.
about the future of technology. Yeah, and we've been doing this since 2008, in case anyone's wondering. Yes.
I just wonder, working with all this sort of stuff, especially being retired in my case these days, really. I mean, it is an engagement thing, where, like you say, if you're trapped indoors and can't go out for the best part of a year or something, perfect place to escape to. Who needs Zoom rooms and stuff? You got whole worlds
That's right.
to lift your spirit. And I suppose it did help knowing this sort of stuff beforehand, that it was there and, to be made use of. But last week we had a chap called Lone Wolf on, who actually lives a couple of miles down the road from me in London. But he made a point of saying, Linux is the only thing to run the back end on. But we got into a bit of a sort of oddity at the end of the show where he actually screen shared his back end, and he operates this, 700 region cluster of sims, but he has a system, and he displayed it on the back end live to us, where imagine you're at a party on the region he's hosting, and something goes wrong. He's actually able to move the whole region onto a different server while you are still on it partying. You don't actually, yeah, you know exactly what I mean. You don't have to log out or crash. If something's going wrong, he simply moves you and your whole party and your whole music and your stage and everything onto another region. And you don't, anybody attending, it's seamless. He says, if you blink your eye, it's like a blink of an eyelid. You might just get a momentary thing, but the attendees don't notice.
That's a highly reliable architecture. You do that also for mission critical systems, because you would certainly never want something to go down that is critical to everyone's survival. Yeah.
So, I thought all these years, even Second Life crashes, why don't they do that?
It's expensive usually.
Yeah. And you've obviously got to manually, I presume somebody's got to do that drag and drop across servers, so monitoring 700 worlds, as it were, is not.
Well, mainframes do it. I used to run one for Air Force Space Command. I was the systems programmer on it that would have cutover for the storage directors, the storage devices, the everything, so that to the users it was imperceptible around the world. And that's a highly reliable system. You want that kind of thing. But it's wonderful to hear that you're getting it in virtual worlds.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
On the hypergrid to boot.
Okay.
I know Cesar was trying to get in there again, because we're going there on safari on Wednesday again. Well, no, it's the first time we're going on safari there, but as a result of the show. So no chance of safari makes a point of crashing grids it visitors. That's not going to happen this Wednesday.
That's good. That's good.
Once you've logged in, it's just like any other OpenSim region, and presumably if he detects something going wrong, he would just drag it onto an empty space. Apparently his whole grid is more like Second Life, because anything that's unoccupied is still usable water.
Sure.
So
that's
you can drag a new island into position at a moment's notice. So great to be God.
And which grid was that? Why don't you tell us again?
It's actually called the Moses.
It had Wolf in the name, didn't it?
Yes. Sorry, I'm getting confused. It's Wolf Enterprises or something.
Wonderful.
I can find that out for you anyway, and it's on our it's on this web and everything. But we'll get back again. Safari is actually going to be going there. This is literally announced today, because where we were going to go on Wednesday has dropped out for some reason. So Cesar's hastily arranged for us to go to this one too. So as a follow up to the show, that's great. And also it'd be nice to have a safari going to somewhere where you can't crash it. Although I better shut up, because something will probably go wrong. Anything will go wrong when Safari's around.
I think it's Wolf Territories. Wolf Territories.
Wolf Territories grid.
Oh,
That's
great.
it.
Thank
Wolf
you.
Territories grid. And yeah, you can find them on OpenSim World, so it's not they're not hidden. But yeah, I had never really heard of them before, and I hadn't heard of him, and he lives down the road. And, it's amazing what you stumble across. Right, okay. Just before we move on to, I'm going to get you to go through slides and stuff. I did forget talking Safari, right? We will be going to this one on Wednesday, but Cesar told me just before we came on that there's two special things on Thursdays that have been arranged. Not this coming Thursday, but on Thursday, June the 23rd, right? There's going to be there's an anniversary. The Metaverse Museum, or the Museum of the Metaverse. I think it's actually in Italian, but it's there anyway. On the Craft Grid. They're celebrating 15 years in OpenSim, believe it or not. So I hope this isn't a surprise party, because if it is, I've just blown it. It's going to be a party, basically, celebrate for Roxello, who runs it, and celebrating that 15 years.
Surprise.
Right. I noticed James has typed in here wtgrid.net. Which
The Lone Wolf Grid, yes.
That's
yeah,
for
what
both
is that?
territories. Yep.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so for those of you listening at home, I've just read it out for you. Right. So yeah, this will be on 23rd of June, and then let me just check here. I think it's on the 29th or 30th. Having a looky here. Oh no, 29th. Oh, it's on Wednesday. Oh right. Yeah, and on the 30th, which again is a Thursday, so remember there would have been a normal safari the day before, the Metropolis Grid. It's based in Germany, and they're like Franco Grid. They're one of the very big grids, but Germans have so many grids now. They seem to have tribalized rather than focused on the big Metropolis Grid. But it used to be a very popular place to have a default avatar to hypergrid around with. They're closing down. We knew this a few weeks ago, but what Thursday is trying to do, and if you know anything, you might be able to help her, is she wants to actually hold on the Metropolis Grid a sort of grand closing down party, for the departure of the virtual land. So those, as I say, are two extra pieces. I put them in my diary ready to announce, but I was so focused on the other stuff. God,
What's interesting about that is many of us are getting older. It's like we're not getting any younger after the decades pass, And so often people tell me, well, such and such closed. And I'll say, the people who run it might be retiring or might be, needing a little rest or something, or, passing the baton to others. And so I don't want your listeners to think, all these places are closing. It must be dead. No, that's called change.
And aging.
Yeah,
and actually dying, but not. It doesn't mean the grid is dead or the platform is dead.
No, it doesn't.
A particular island has sunk because that's the way it works. Not everything is afloat forever, But yeah, very true, very true. I mean, I know a lot of regions and things. Actually, more in Second Life, actually, which is a huge place than OpenSim, where people have retired or just got too old for it. I mean, I've never really run a grid except as host of this show, but I would hate to do it. There would have been a time I'd have thought about it, but I'd never do it now. You sort of find yourself slowing down, and I think, well, I'll do the show every week, and I'll do safari, and keep occupied, but stop stretching oneself. So we do change, I think, as time goes by. So I think the next thing I'm going to let you. I might intervene as you go, but I know we've loaded a load of slides you brought with us. I'm not going to dare look at them, because then James will complain that my face is too. I can't look at them without turning my face. It's terrible. But maybe you'd like to sort of click through them. I think we're on the first one already, aren't we?
Okay.
James will no doubt have a camera shot on the big screen there, so maybe
Great.
talk. I know you've got a lot of backstory to talk because when we were
Sure.
reversing them, so maybe just do what you were doing earlier and sort of talk
Absolutely.
the whole thing.
Well,
Yeah.
often people ask, well, why are you even looking at the Oculus? And of course, my journey began in 1995. Uh, for my doctoral research, I created an immersive virtual world on a PC. I had the 166 megahertz processor had to be invented before I could do that. And I was using Superscape, and some of you may have been on SuperCity online, or a product out of the UK that was about $4,000, $5,000. My entire lab cost about $26,000. So when we started working in virtual worlds, I was like, wow, it's like magic, right? Well, you just saw a scene of Sakurajima, and that's the tea house. And the reason I have that scene there for you is to realize that the things we do in these spaces are so effortless. That's what I call it. Now, obviously, all the designers of mesh are saying, no, wait a minute, it took me hours or days to do that, or weeks or whatever. But it's effortless in comparison to doing the vector geometry, the wireframing, the rendering, and the collision detections by hand back decades ago. So to me, this is like magic. But anyway, you're seeing Sakurajima. That's an OpenSim on Virtual Harmony. It's one of our 18 grids. And this is a salute to Frankie Antonelli, one of our leading educators and thought leaders at Virtual Harmony, and a good friend of ours and of Barbara Truman, delightful Duwango, who passed on July 17th of last year. So I'll skip to the next slide, and you'll see it here in just a moment. And for Thanksgiving in 2020, we held it in Sakurajima, and we had lobsters and crabs and sat in kimonos, and we had this amazing experience. And we're in the U.S., so that means that Thanksgiving for us is this time of thanks, where families gather and celebrate. And of course, we were celebrating in a virtual world, right? with our farm family, we call it, because we're hosting on a farmhouse in Alabama. And so we thought about that experience. And this was Frankie getting in touch with her roots. She was born in Japan but never got to live there. And she says, boy, if a pandemic hit, and if we're going to pass at some point, it would be really nice to have these experiences. And so we started creating them and having them. Well, on the next slide, I'm just showing a comparison. It'll appear here in a sec, of Thanksgiving in a more traditional setting, with turkey and the trimmings, and of course set in a more historical sim. So some of our grids are more historical, others are set in space, because we conduct research on what would it take to live on Mars. What would it take to strengthen space travel? And how would we stay alert, physically happy, mentally happy, emotionally happy? So we're thinking beyond the practical. We're also thinking about the human spirit. And so we get together and have these experiences. We've created all the content around us, and they're on different grids within Virtual Harmony. So then we thought, well, there's all this technology out and all this talk about what would it take to integrate the two. And we says, well, they don't integrate well. They have different strengths. So let's take a look. So we hooked an Oculus Quest 2 up to the PC using a cable, and we brought up Sakurajima, and we logged into it. And then, so you see on screen, there's a window within a window where you're looking at us in OpenSim, but from within the Oculus. And we show a picture of a woman wearing one, just so you get a sense of what do we look like when we're doing this, right? Well, then we thought, okay, let's port our mesh into the Oculus. But we learned something. First, obviously, we had to use Unity as a way of packaging it. We could have used Unreal Engine 5, and that may be an option in the future. But we had experience with Unity. Now it is Spinoza Quinnell, right? He had taken, what's that?
I said, of course.
Yeah, he had taken some of our previous work and had created pervasive computing games. And if you're not familiar with that term, that just means like Pokemon Go or Ingress, some of their other games. And it just means you go out to physical locations in the real world, collect data on that, whatever you're collecting, and then we were bringing them into the virtual world and translating them into Cherokee, one of the Native American languages that we grew up with. Andy and I went to high school and college together, so we have a similar background, right? And a
Yeah.
love for these things. So we tend to integrate things that are natural to our environment, that are important to our values, and that also strengthen the spirit. And so when we started doing this Oculus app, he realized he had to change the mesh a bit. You'll notice it looks dramatically different than the virtual world version. And also, we learned something. One of the things we learned when we got it into the Oculus software developer kit is that the Oculus is an Android app, an Android architecture. So we had to use compression algorithms and ways of thinking about our mesh that would be optimized to fit. And I noticed earlier when you talked about our video, you said, well, it had that narrow old school window. There's a reason for that. Anytime you're doing anything that's like a mobile app, going to have a narrower profile.
Yeah.
And so we think about these things. So this is the tea house, and this is where multiplayer groups would gather to go into the app. Now, when I said earlier it's effortless here, I just mean we all log in, we teleport to the same site, we click on an object to sit on it, or to dance or to socialize or whatever, right? As you noted in the Hypergrid Safari video earlier. And so you can have all these amazing experiences with 20 to 40 avatars quite easily, and even up to 100, if your scripts are low, and everything is optimized on the region. Now, there have been scalable solutions. You mentioned Moses earlier. I was part of the Moses project, and one of our initiatives from 2011 to 2017 was to use Open Simulator and to identify ways of scaling the population so that we could get up to 150 avatars on a single region and have them able to function. And so we created a Middle East village. And again, that's the royal we. Doug Maxwell and his team created all that prim and mesh, for it. And then we held role-playing games. And I did participate in those, both in the planning of them and the scripting of the non-player characters, etc., and then of our work. And of course, we had many avatars testing. We couldn't just use bots, right? We had to have real people with real stuff and huge inventories to come visit. And of course, see what that load was like and how it performed. So the tea house is our gathering space. And the Oculus team recommends that you have a central space. So like there's a fishing app where you have to gather in the room before you can go fishing together, that kind of thing. And of course, we have a crystals game, we have a checkers game, we have a lot of mini games within our app, just so you know. And those are things we've designed. Yep. And then as you go through the doors and you go exploring, you wander a path. You can go into a bathhouse that we call an onsen, after the Japanese term for it. And then you can pick up a bucket and go collecting crystals and do all these mini games. There's like 5 tasks or quests or adventures that you can have within this. One of them, featured on the left, is a rock climbing wall. And we've set it up. Yeah, that's what it is. And you see crystals next to it, and then you see handheld, like grommets or whatever they're called, that you can grab and pull yourself up. Well, we had to redesign it so I could play seated. And here's why. I was playing a ping pong game called 11 on the Oculus, and I used to have second for nationals. I won 49 tournaments in real life, and when I was in college, I loved it. I cut my handle off and played pen style upside down, and and I was playing. I know. I was playing this virtual game, and I leaned way over the table to get a shot, because there was a lot of English on it. I was trying to slam it back over, and there was nothing underneath me in real life space. So of course I took a header, right? Landed on my knees, scuffed them up, and I said, well, A, I have to have a mat from now on the ground, and B, I'm grounded for a few weeks, until my knees recover. So we
It's
had to
things
add,
like that. It's things like that that made me
yeah.
rather apprehensive about Helmet Land,
Well, you
really.
should be, because in the future, I would really prefer to have something like a banister that I could lean against, so I have an awareness of my body and its
Yeah.
context to the real world. Now, the one nice thing about the Oculus, and I've learned a second thing. I used to make a big open space for me to play in. Now I use the tight little circle, and I'll show you that in a moment. And the reason I do that is so I can extend an arm over that circle, and it forces the Oculus to break contact with the virtual world and show me the world around me. So it's kind of like I'm looking at a black and white view of my room, of my living room where I'm playing. That way I can answer the phone. I can adjust something for my dog. I can, react to my family without seeming like an automaton.
Yeah.
And I no longer take a
I,
header.
I meant to ask, actually, I mean, this is probably a good point to quickly interject,
Uh-huh.
is I'm forever making jokes about people going into virtual worlds legless.
Hmm.
You can take that whichever way you want, but
Well, I have
thinking,
legs, but
yeah, yeah, thinking particularly, we see, even Zuckerberg's avatar appears without legs and things. You think this just isn't right. And then, of course, there are discussions about interoperability. Can you put a world like OpenSim into Oculus? Now, I don't mean this particular OpenSim into Oculus as such, but if you have a fully fleshed environment where the avatar has legs and has all these attributes, how do you cope with a platform that only shows half of them? If you see what I mean.
you
Uh,
know, things have
so
changed over time. So
yeah,
you are correct. Nowadays, there are some apps that will show you yourself.
yeah,
Sometimes it'll be the upper half, as you're noting with the legless thing, because a version of their software came out that allows you to define your avatar, and you kind of define it from the thighs up or the knees up or whatever, so you don't
right,
tend to see your feet. But I did have a version I created for but I'm getting confused. I'm thinking of Verbella where I put my
oh
shoes
yeah,
on too. Yes. So some of them will, and of course in Verbella you can wear a head-mounted display device. At that time, I think you're only looking through your eyes, so you lose that isometric view, which is the view of yourself at an angle, that God's view from behind and up a little bit, looking down. Um, and that's the difference is, in my virtual world back in the 90s, I know that's old school, but I thought about that and I made it so that we had choices on views. And I used a special device called a Spaceball 2003 that had 8 different views. So, like if you were in a helicopter flying it and you were off rescuing submariners who are about to drown, right? They're on top waving their arms at you. You could look straight down. You could look out on the horizon. You could look from behind you at the back of your helicopter. So, in other words, your camera could rapidly change positions just like it does in Blender or any of the 3D mesh tools, so you can see those perspectives. Now, the thing you're getting at, which is so important, is your recognition of self, right?
yeah,
Awareness of yourself. I think that is an important feature you're bringing up there, Mal, because um, I like to see myself every once in a while, and it's not a point of vanity. It's the relationship of me to you and James right now is important to me because we're sharing, and of course we're trying to speak to the audience, but we're also trying to share ideas that are so critical. And if we were disembodied, right? If we almost didn't exist, that would feel so eerie, and it does. Yep.
yeah.
That was so beautiful about Barbara Truman's research. She thought about virtual physioception, which is the notion of your body and its relationship to the virtual world, and then the intersubjective presencing, this notion that when we talk and share and exchange and even gesture, or how you noted your head has to be looking a certain direction for us to feel that engagement, that is so critical. And in VR, we sometimes lose some of those cues. You're right.
Yeah, I think I mean, time will tell, but to me, well, not make a long conversation of it. To me, the fact that we can have 2D worlds on 2D screens like we have now probably gives me that thing a bit better, because I can look at the screen. At the moment, I'm looking at myself as opposed to looking out at whatever I'm doing, which is I would normally be doing, but I'm on the show. But I can see all of me. And I mean, you can strap on artificial animations and do all that thing, but you can actually feel there's a thing there that you're in. Just simply like that. Now, when it comes to helmets or things like that, true, you are in an environment. It seems to be that no one helmet encompasses all the things that will be necessary for you to be fully embodied. This will obviously change with new helmets and stuff, but also the very presence of a helmet is something I find oppressive. If I could pull out some goggles and plug them into my phone or plug them into my computer and have that as an alternative display, using presumably the processor in the phone or the computer to actually do all the hard work, it would be just like a portable monitor that gives you a 360 view.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something like
that's
that,
what we're doing, though, because the Oculus,
in.
you don't have to plug it in. It's a computer on your face.
Yeah.
That feels a little weird.
Yeah.
But you know what? You know why it's so popular? This is the first version of any that have come out in my awareness. And of course, I haven't tried several of the others, but I've tried quite a few, where I can wear my glasses with it without scratching the lenses. And I have progressive lenses, and one form of vision isn't even corrected, so I need them to be able to function clearly. And then
same here. I've forgotten all about that.
Right. See, if you can't see, you're dead in the water in these kinds of environments. But no, with my early one, I had a stereoscopic, high quality one that cost me $2,500 back in the day. But this one, I'm able to wear my lenses. I did put little lens cups on it so it wouldn't scratch my lenses and I wouldn't scratch it, right? And they were like $25. It was nothing. But that gave me peace of mind. Then I put on a comfort strap on the back by the Kiwi folks, and that is with a little rotary thing, so I can easily adjust and put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off. Because that's what you do when you're developing and testing, is you can't just leave that on your face for 8 hours and call it a day, And then I agree with you. I want to get away from wearing something on the face, or if we're wearing something, wouldn't it be nice if it was just like sunglasses or something very lightweight and unobtrusive? So, for those of us who are used to glasses, right?
But even people who aren't used to glasses, something that is the size of glasses or goggles, the things you wear, rubber things we used to wear as kids underwater. And they cut out all the peripheral light and everything. So if you really want to go that far, but I just see it as an add-on screen. I mean, we got music. We got music on our computers, but we then have Walkmans, and they come through headphones, so it became portable. And even now, I'm talking here now. I've got a really good mic and good speakers on the Mac. I'm not wearing any kind of headgear at all. But on another machine here, I will put on a headset and mic, to do it. And usually after an hour or two of a show or something, I can't wait to get the headset off. And that's just a lightweight headset. But we've got used to the idea of walking around with our music, so we walk around with lightweight headphones. What we need to do next is get used to the idea of walking around with our vision, with something lightweight that can be put on and off, just like headphones. Because if you wear headphones out and you're walking out and about, by the time you've played a whole album, or in my case, you kind of want a little break before you play the next.
You definitely do. I mean, with music, I tend to like repetition, and I will play music quite longer than normal. But with the head-mounted display device, Andy at first decided to map his entire home, and that means drawing a green or blue symbol around your body for all these spaces in which that's your operation space. So he mapped his whole home. It reminded me of what people do with the Roomba when they're teaching their little vacuum the spaces to vacuum and how to do it. And I had to laugh because I said, Andy, you don't want to go running around your house without being able to see the world around you. You'll be running blind, running into things because you won't see those objects. And it's not the same as the Roomba at all.
But
And I, yeah,
the
yeah,
alternative is, then again, it's a lot of kit, but I mean, it's the tread pad type thing where
yes,
the floor moves to your position, kind of thing. Because a lot of people don't realize that when they're in a virtual world, right, they press their arrow key or their mouse or whatever to walk forward. Yeah. Virtual or not, they're not walking forward at all. The environment is moving towards them. If you see what I mean.
Oh,
You're
yes.
you're in a fixed position, and the virtual world is resolving itself closer to you as you move forward, but you don't move forward.
Well, so
So
that
in a
brings up
way,
another point.
yeah,
The rendering is similar. Where you're looking is rendered, right, in
yeah,
focus. Everything else is out of focus.
yeah,
That's what makes people feel so sick, is this changing focal perspective. When they look here, then they look there, then they look here, and then they go, I don't feel so good. Yeah. Well, those are
it's gonna be
wonderful.
like the old
So,
seasickness.
so have you tried the Oculus? I was just curious.
Yes and no. I actually have an Oculus Go, right, which I
Oh,
actually went out.
nice.
I actually went out and Go when it came out, not rather than a big thing. It was supposed to be lighter and better. So I know there's enough on that for me to know what it's about, but it
Sure.
can't run any of the modern stuff. And I have to be honest, I don't want to go down in history as being a customer of God Emperor Zuckerberg. I want to know.
Well,
I want an open metaverse, and in a sense, somebody has to make the hardware, and it has to cost something, and things
sure.
like that. But everything that guy does seems to be, down to the making money base of advertising and stuff. And well, actually, he's in big trouble apparently now. He's because the main business, Facebook, is collapsing, and people are.
But he saw that coming.
Yeah,
That's why that he's put all this energy into VR as the future, because people are going to need something more immersive, more satisfying for the future of their socialization. I was
yeah,
listening to a bunch of kids talk about the fact that Facebook is their parents' tool, not
yeah,
theirs. And
yeah,
as soon as your next generation no longer perceives you as relevant, that's when
yeah,
you realize that you have to get with the times and appeal to that gamer philosophy. And I don't mean people who play games, I mean
yeah,
people who need the incentives and to be highly motivated and engaged and have all this rich media that they can help create and be a part of, be inside
yeah.
the media. That's really what makes this so exciting. Video is passive, you're not part of the video, but you are part of the VR or the virtual world or all these spaces.
I think there's definitely a generational thing stuck in here too, because
Hmm.
even if you take something as commonplace as television, right, which
Hmm.
is way changing now, but certainly over here it is. Um, it's not just the fact it's passive, so it's a bit out of date in that sense. But the type of things people watch change with the generations, you know. Um, so broadcasters have to take the generation that watches the teenage programs, which they're probably manipulating their thought patterns with, oh, this is the norm for a teenager, and the teenager believes it's the norm. You've got to have a certain kind of mind to think beyond that. But they allow for a whole generation moving on, and within say 10 years they've got a whole set of different programs for that same audience, and the audience that the younger ones were is now a totally new audience. I mean, I look at the BBC in the UK, for example. I mean, they've just taken their kids' channels off air because they're moving them to a new streaming format because nobody watches television anymore, but the kids still want the program, so they will want to stream it. So they're kind of adapting there, and I see no reason that immersive, they're planning immersive television, which will
Oh,
be,
sure.
it'd probably be stupid. It'll probably be like a quiz show where the audience can answer to with a
Well,
remote.
hopefully not. Did you ever see
Hopefully
the
not.
miniseries Wild Palms? I know that's very old. I'm dating myself from the 90s, right? But
Okay.
it was three vignettes, three nights with different directors like Oliver Stone, etc. And it had James Belushi, an all-star cast, and it was all about VR in the future and how it was going to be immersive television that would be displayed as holograms around your body on your living room couch.
Yeah.
So the actors would appear around your body and you'd be part of the story. And that was the premise. There's a lot more to it, obviously, but an entire political system and a intrigue. But the technology fascinated me because that was our vision in the 90s, is to have these immersive experiences that people were participatory, they could be creators, and they could also keep changing the story every time they saw it. Their interaction with it made it this very personal experience. That's where I think we're trying to go. But we might be getting off topic here.
Well, no,
That
I think,
waterfall that I have on the slide. I know poor James is like,
yeah,
is she ever getting off the slide? I just wanted to point out for
yeah,
designers. I know
yeah,
there's some designer developers out there. You know, we design waterfalls and the spray that occurs,
yeah,
in virtual worlds. Again, with several very sound techniques, including particles and animated textures, etc. In these tools that we're using, it's pretty easy to create them too. But of course, some of the effects, you have to create them a certain way, and you can have koi ponds and all these same effects. And when you're in them and you're going by them, every so often, I get that eerie illusion that I have goosebumps and that I can feel the
yeah,
coolness of the air near the water, because the sounds have that
yeah.
authenticity, that
If you have
trick the mind.
the
But
sound
I
is,
don't know. Yeah.
yeah,
Did you notice one of the winners at AWE 2022 was OVR for Scent? They're adding Scent
yeah,
to VR.
yeah. Well, they no, they've. I mean, you can get anything you want now. You can. They've got taste. The idea is you go into a virtual restaurant and they serve you a dish,
Uh-huh.
and that you will be able to eat it. I think it's a bit like scent. You think
Oh,
of
yes.
a printer, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has four inks: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That was a rule, yeah, to print a color picture. Right? To formulate a scent, to 3D print a scent, like electronic aromatherapy, you need to have the equivalent of so many base smells, perfumes, that can be mixed to recombine to create a simulation of any other scent. So it can be anything from sea air to horse manure.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be created out of a master set of base scents, aroma, essential oils or whatever. And when you think about the way I remember I balked at this when we first heard about it. I think it was Ian Hughes at IBM demonstrated it for us on one of the old shows. Um, he thought 3D printers were the big thing was going to be 3D printing of food. It's actually become things like bones for the body and stuff like that 3D print
Mm-hmm.
taken off with. Um, but the idea is all you need is some kind of substrate, right? that can be mixed together, like in Star Trek or something, to create any food and taste you want. So if
Right.
you've got something attached to your mouth and you're in a virtual restaurant and they give you some fish and chips, then it could be possible that you could get some kind of paste or something that
Mm-hmm.
you lick in your mouth and it simulates that taste for you, just as the oils simulate smell. So I think eventually you better walk into a holodeck and sense and think of sounds and sense and all the things we can imagine, our senses can imagine, will in some way be fed to us. How cheap it will, well, and it won't be cheap at the beginning, but eventually it might be so ubiquitous. And we're quantum computing, things that would take a year at the moment would take a microsecond. to work out. So I think it's all related to that stage beyond what we might call the real second life or alternative electronic life.
See, that would be very satisfying if you're on the space station or out on Mars and you
Yeah.
didn't have access to the real food,
Yeah, well, for sure. But even simple things like the iPhone and stuff. I mean, I can imagine, Apple doing something way off. I don't know where they will do off-center things anymore, but you put your iPhone down on the ground, on the table, face up,
Mhm.
and instead of looking at a screen, a hologram pops up at you. And so you make a FaceTime call, maybe even a Skype call, where you can see and talk to the person at the other end, but instead of seeing their picture on the screen is flat and a hologram of them is actually popping up.
Mhm.
And at Apple's developer thing last week, I'm going off subject now, but they
I'm ready to bring
demonstrate.
out the rabbit hole graphic now.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Well, no, it's still relevant. That's the thing.
Okay,
It's what
okay,
we're talking
alright.
about, I think. The new operating system, if it's on the M2 chip or something,
Sure.
the camera that you're having your FaceTime call with, right? You're
Yeah.
looking at it, and the person you're talking to is looking at it too, right? But the camera is capable of looking at you and looking down at the same
Uh-huh.
time.
Sure.
So you can actually have yourself and your desktop in view at the same time.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. So, but you've got your hands on the desktop and you're doing whatever you're doing on the desktop, and the person at the other end can see that, but they can also see above that your actual normal video. And it has something to do with the way the receptors, they've got LiDAR for light now, which is
Mhm.
like radar for radio. But apparently, the AI processing can actually work out. It's like with LiDAR; it can work out what the back of somebody looks like, even though you're photographing them from the front.
Mhm.
Certain
That's
information
interesting.
it can extract to find out what the back actually looks like. And this is the same with looking at other angles. You just know you've got the phone and you've got cameras in it, but
Sure.
it's sensing stuff all over the place. So it can sense your face when it's lying flat. It has to be worked on.
Well, I was
But
going to say, because I wanted to sense me thinner and younger and and my ideal self, which it tends to be half elven. Uh-oh,
can
I
we
see the
cut?
rabbit hole's up. Well,
Yeah,
the
can we
slide
cut?
that's
Can we
underneath the
cut?
rabbit hole was
Can
the
we cut?
capstone level that happens
Yeah.
when after you finish the 5 quests in our app, you then see this. And the only reason I was showing it is it's a little more animated looking. It doesn't look like we try to go for a little more realism and aesthetics in
Yeah.
virtual worlds, and of course, we couldn't do that here because we needed to keep it around 1 megabytes or so. And I didn't know if you knew this, but our virtual world grids, each grid is over 1 to 2 terabytes in size. So you can't take all that content and upload it into the Oculus and have it be able to perform. You wouldn't do that to a mobile app and a mobile device, right? So I didn't know if people knew that. And of course, here's back on the Sakurajima grid. You'll see it here in just a moment. And just to give us some context for what I'm talking about, all of these things create a mood and an experience that we have to rethink whenever we're doing VR. So my thought here is that often people tell me, "Well, VR is better," and I says, "No, it's different, and it of course has some compelling moments, and of course right now everyone's just really hot about it, but please realize that this experience and feeling like you put your hand over into the water is an amazing thing, and of course in VR." You feel like you could touch the water. It's almost like the opening in a 3D version of the movie Avatar, right? When the water comes lapping up around you. You get those kinds of experiences. Well, I can move a little faster through the slides, James, because I know eventually you have to have a life, right? But
Yeah,
Sometimes,
I
sometimes,
wonder
yep.
why we're speeding up.
yep. But so some of the slides here just feature Virtual
David,
Harmony. But instead of featuring the space station and featuring all the practical stuff we've talked about for many, many years, we're now looking at some of these aesthetics, the things that matter, the bathhouse you're seeing on screen, and the ways of the things we value, the moments of social. Now I'll go ahead and click the slide. You'll see it in just a moment. And you're going to see two hands on it. And one thing I wanted to remind you of, and Mal brought this up, is the fact that if we don't see our bodies and we don't see representations of parts of us, how do we know we're there, really? And how do we have this sense of presence and context? So we created hands instead of controllers, so we wouldn't have to go through this beautiful bathhouse and these wonderful rock climbing walls and experiences and have be shooting it with controllers, right? With lasers coming from them, which is the way you interact with content. So we created these that kind of looks like stormtroopers, doesn't it? On the left, the stormtrooper hands. Andy created. Yeah, Andy created those, and so we could grasp objects. And here's the thing I wish we could do in virtual worlds. And see, this is what gets interesting to me is by working in these VR worlds, it's causing me to be a little more creative in my virtual world thoughts and research and designs. I would like to be able to grasp a bucket and pick it up without having to, left click and go through all these other motions. I want to just be able to reach over and grab it. And so we're starting to think about that. You can do that in the VR. You can reach over, grab it, pick it up, drop it, spill it, put contents inside it. That's a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
Well, just so you know, Oculus came out with an update like in February, March, and they added the hand you see on the right. And when they did, their hand is like 15 degrees off from our hand, or maybe 5 degrees. So you're seeing 4 hands instead of 2 hands. One set that's up a little bit, angled, and the tilted, and the other set straight down. And so we're gesturing like mad, going, well, this doesn't look natural. and so so my next point is that we have to. One of the frustrating things for designers in these spaces is to think of we want them to create these new features, and we're grateful that they do. However, now we have to change our app. So you asked me at the beginning, will this ever be available to the public? I says, not until the software is not a moving target, and and all the usability features feel comfortable to us, the design team, right? And I could care less whether or not it's actually available to the public. When it is, we'll probably offer it for free. It's an educational tool and an experience, but it's really a proof of concept for us to explore these features, to think about the research, conduct it, and then think about what we want in OpenSim for our future integration and work, right? And so it helps us to be a little more demanding. I'm not going to read these slides. I put them in here just as talking points, so I'm going to flip on ahead. And the next one you're going to see in just a moment shows you the circle I was talking about. That is both a teleportation circle, right? That helps you. And by the way, teleportation's not like between grids or between like hypergridding or like going to another region. This is like my little bunny hop that I do when I do a double click teleport in the virtual world, right? And so that circle just tells you where you're going to land. And of course, in this case, you're landing in a chair. But if I extend my hands, if I have that circle around my body and I extend my hand over that circle, the visual of the virtual world disappears. And I'm now looking at the real world around my body, but it's in black and white. In the future, it needs to be in color, and be a little more natural, not like an old 50s movie, or 40s movie.
So and when you're in the world,
you are. You're in the virtual VR.
Your avatar is there. You basically see the ring, and you know that when you put your hands over it,
you don't see the ring until you're moving. Right now, you're seeing the ring because you're about to move into that chair. You could be clicking. And you're just using a button on your joystick to do that, but you could click the ring over across the room, and then your body just teleports into that spot. In case you're wondering, And so your viewport is then showing you the world around you. But what I'm talking about is there's also a blue ring around you that you've defined before you load the software. That's called your guardian circle or whatever. And
Right.
you, Mal, just imagine for a moment you picked up your left hand and you just moved it out to your side as if you were just extending your arm, kind of like a T pose or whatever. As soon
Yeah.
as you do that, you break contact over the edges of that ring, which you're not seeing the ring. You just know it's there because you said it. And
Yeah.
then your vision changes. So this is how, if you got a phone call or you wanted to change that music or you wanted to interact with your equipment around you, that's how you break the visual to the real world around you. As soon as you move your hand back inside, your visual of the VR continues. See? And so that's a very interesting thought. Could we somehow blend worlds? See, these are the things that interest me about these technologies. It's not whether I support a certain vendor or a certain person or
Oh,
visionary. None of
yeah.
that matters to me. I'm glad that he's doing all this work because it allowed me to buy an inexpensive headset,
Yeah.
like my fourth headset, and then play, right? But but to me, and by the way, on screen you're also seeing the Unity software on the edges, what it's
Yeah.
like to configure these assets and say, well, this happens when you touch that, or this happens when blah, blah, blah. That's
Yeah.
how you stage this stuff. And so, and I'll move to another one. I could see us in the future configuring our own spaces and hooking, when you're in the Oculus or Meta, you're in a computer on your face that's running
Yeah.
similar to on your phone, like an app. But if you hook it into the PC, you can have a multi-user experience where people can come by and drop by, kind of like Mozilla Hubs or one of those other spaces, and
Yeah.
the software keeps changing. So now you can define an avatar. But you're right, the avatars are very crude. They could learn a lot from us. But the reason they're crude, the choices are limited and the graphics are a little more cartoonish, is because you're working with a very small footprint for graphics performance, right? You have to
Yeah.
keep those file sizes low. But we know this is going to change over time. So this is like a proving ground that's very popular with kids and with the current generation. Everywhere I go, they say, well, my kids are getting one for their birthday, for Christmas, for whatever. And you notice at Christmas, these were the number one apps for both the uh, uh, Apple Store and for Google Play. So it caught a certain popularity. The question is, will it sustain it over time unless there are richer experiences, more quality graphics, and then they need to learn from the virtual world just like we need to learn from the experiences that we value in these kinds of spaces. And so I look at picking up the bucket or look at direct interaction of objects and I think, wonder how we could do that here.
Yeah.
and and that's the part that I love. It's not whether I like that or this, because Hubit's always teasing me saying, "Oh, you're being a traitor to OpenSim," and of course I'm not. I love Open Simulator, and of course Rhiannon Chat Noir and I help host the Open Simulator Community Conference in December, which you mentioned, and we'll
Yeah.
start planning it here in a few months. Yeah.
OSHG. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The months go by.
Well, the next few slides, and I know time is running on, so I could go a little faster. We're gonna take you to Pompeii next. We use we recreate historical experiences. We think about climate and environment. We think about shared leadership. We think about a lot of different experiences. And oh, I'm wrong. We're at McMurdo Station, and we're thinking about a set of research that ties to the Shackelford expedition and some of the historical explorations that occurred. And we're actually flying. It took me a moment to realize I do have the Pompeii stuff coming up, but
There was,
yeah,
I don't know whether it's just me, but there was the tint to that image doesn't so much
it's
remind me of
sunset.
snow. Well, it
This
doesn't
was
remind me of snow. It reminds me of sand.
I know, or
Yeah.
or some dog's been nearby, a really large one, right? I couldn't resist. But yeah, I know. I was thinking earlier when you were talking about his back-end hosting, and I thought only in virtual worlds could we talk about these things, right? But in any event, here Barbara Truman's landing a helicopter on the clubhouse essentially, and we're at the meeting space, and we run a SEAL game where we rescue SEALs. We also have special forces games too, where we think about survival, and this, of course, is another survival site. And so we do some serious work, but we also play in these serious spaces. And so often people ask me, well, what is virtual harmony? I says it's this integration of cool content and playfulness to explore important research questions and things that are just not possible in real life. And we can be very fearless in how we ask questions and reflect on the answers, you know. And so, and I love OpenSim for all of this, you know. So we thought about it. We thought, well, yeah, we're all getting older. When are we retiring? And of course, the answer was no, 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 no. In fact, if we ever did retire, it would be to create more content.
Yeah,
Because,
retire into the
uh-huh,
virtual world,
that's
basically.
it. That's it exactly. Because it's so invigorating what we do and so exciting that it's not just a play space, it's not just a hobby, it's a lifestyle. And it's important to our mental and emotional health as well as to our research and discovery.
Well, the interaction is very much part of it. People who get older who just watch TV or just listen to the radio decline because they're not getting any stimulation and
Hmm.
any sort of new thoughts. Whereas if you're in a virtual environment, that's stimulation is
That
always
may
happening
be,
one way or
by the
another.
way, on screen, that may be JJ Drinkwater crashing the helicopter into the ground. For those of you who are familiar with Caledon and the librarian there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you there,
Right,
Mal. But you're
he-
right. It's all about stimulation. Absolutely.
Simulation and stimulation. There you
That's
are.
it. Yeah, I hear what I want to hear, right? Too much realism. So we'll put polar bears and penguins and seals all in the same part of the Arctic or Antarctic, and that won't matter to us. Oh, obviously, when we work with science and go for realism, we separate them, you know. But for playfulness, you notice that we have a bear coming to the lounge for a drink. He's outside the window, you know, with his bottle ready to go. And Andy likes to build in these elements of whimsy throughout our builds. That that keeps us on our toes, and we just love that. Well, let me go a little faster.
Yeah, and
I'll
there
go to Pompeii next. What's that?
it sounds like you might be watching the YouTube feed, and it's a good 24 seconds behind what we're
It
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about.
is. I wasn't sure. I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
sure.
yeah.
Don't watch the YouTube feed. I turn my head now and again, but it is
Okay.
very hard to tell. And we're fine for time, but well, unless you and
Okay,
I.
good. I
Yeah.
was worried that bunny hole business was
No,
you know,
it's
James needs dinner, you know.
I think it's more of a standing joke between me and James.
Right, right.
And
Oh, that's
actually,
good.
I'm the one that normally triggers it. I say you better bring up the rabbit hole graphic.
I know, I know. Well, this is
Yeah.
an example of Pompeii. And for those of you, I often am asked, how do you create all this content? We're not buying this from a store, in case you're wondering. Everything we do is created, you know, for the local regions. And
Yeah.
so it's all, in that sense, it's kind of segregated because we don't go around shopping over the grid or anything. Even though we can hypergrid, you know, we're very careful to use our own content. But
Sure.
and of course, that means it's not all perfect, you know. And so I go around going, Andy, the permissions, you know, they need to be this or they need to be that because we're collaborative. And anytime you collaborate in these spaces, you know that you have to have modified permissions. You have to think of your
Yes.
group work. You have to work well with others and always set things. So all mine
When
are always turned on, in case you're
when
wondering.
you when when you sent me these photos, the first thing
Uh-huh.
I checked in the inventory was are they a copy mod, but otherwise I couldn't put them in the screen.
Yeah, I try to always have that set, but you know what, here lately, because I was just at the Relay for Life of Second Life, um, I use a different version of Firestorm to get into both, but every once in a while they're reading from the same settings and they corrupt.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
and for any of your viewers, if you ever get that white screen of death where nothing loads, all you have to do is go into your app data. It's percent app data percent, all in caps, and you go into Firestorm and delete your user settings.xml, and then you can load your software back up and away you go again. But of course, you have to restore all your settings, and so
And,
I'm so
and
used
you
to
have
it.
to, and you
What's
have
that?
to wait for the cache to repopulate.
You do, but I'm on a really sweet system. I have a 3080 RTX, with 10 gigabytes of video RAM, and then I have 128 gigabytes of RAM, and I spoiled
Oh,
myself. I have an i9, and I decided I went for like 12 years on a homegrown, personally built system, and I said, "Oh, it's time to spoil yourself a little bit." So
why
my
not?
cache, everything loaded up fast when I got here. It's like, shoo, boom. And I love it.
Yeah.
I'm a little too old to wait, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
like that. So impatient. I'm not too bad, but I can't match that kind of RAM. I think I've
I'm
32.
pretty fast, and I'll be on several worlds at the same time,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and I
Well,
have a lot of monitors going and stuff. And you're right, I was watching the feed too with the sound down because I like to think of the user experience. But anyway, so he's created all this and the statues and everything. And you have to realize he does the scripting, he does the mesh, he does the cognitive psychology. He also takes the lead, he and I, on writing the papers and books. We put out 3 books, three book chapters, 35 plus papers, and I just gave my 335th conference presentation. Yep, and keynote. So yeah, that's a lot of
Goodness.
talking.
you,
and,
you,
and
you've got as
uh-huh,
many keynotes as Ken Byers got voices in the podcast.
I know, isn't that crazy? Pretty soon I'll be a full year. And what's funny is the only reason I can't started counting is I'm painfully shy. But this
You
content
always
is so
say
exciting. Yeah, but
that.
this content is so exciting that it's easy to talk about,
Yeah.
technology and where it's going and how it feeds the human spirit. And see, I love all this. By the way, on our Pompeii, the volcano does not erupt, okay? But it could. But it's not going to, not yet. And of course, yep. So next we'll have the chariot races. You'll see, maybe you're seeing them now, and of course Barbara Truman's with us. This was Super Bowl 2021, and of course for those of you who don't watch Super Bowl, that's usually January, you know, or late, early February, depending. And so we're not the type to watch football. We're the type to be in the chariot races. And of course, any of you who've ever raced around in a chariot know it's very hard to capture photos and video while you're racing.
You're right.
And
Yeah.
so that's what I'm doing there. Well, we'll go from Pompeii to something a little more serious. We'll close on these thoughts. We do a lot of work with not just the space program, but with Air Force education in the United States. And we think about how could we use Raspberry Pis and other kinds of tech to port OpenSim onto them, run little pocket worlds, if you will, so that
Yeah.
soldiers could have training simulations and things that feed their spirit, that uplift them. Doesn't all have to be serious. And then, of course, they could hypergrid into the main grid, and we could have it either on our farmhouse in Alabama, or we can roll everything up to the Amazon cloud, the Lambda, quite quickly, and we have that all configured. We're not doing it at the bat of an eyelash, by the way. It does take a little work because we're trying to avoid paying for it, so we don't
I'm
assume those
curious.
costs until we have to. But
I'm,
here,
I'm
what's
curious
that?
here. I'm curious here with the Raspberry Pi. I'm actually going to bring the MetaWorld region back instead of on the old computer. It's actually on one of my spare Raspberry Pis. But can you conceive of a move towards? I mean, you can obviously use phones to get Android apps and things like that a bit, but the Raspberry Pi small form factor. I imagine if it can run a world in itself. Obviously, you've got to
Mhm.
plug it into a screen or something. I mean, can you see it as being a popular way that you might be able to carry your own environment around with you when you're mobile in the real world, so that it's just there to pull it out and plug it in.
Well, that's like Sim on a stick in that sense.
Yeah,
So the Pi is just a micro machine, and of course we weren't using the first Pi; we were using 2 or 3,
yeah,
and the thought here was that not just would everyone have their own world, which they could, but here you're seeing little cards that represent like squadrons or little groups of soldiers who might be doing team events and then doing team competitions in a game-based format, which is one of our thoughts. I can skip over this one. You know, we don't have to dwell here because it's really hard to read, right? But if we move to the next one, we do have one of these how it works slides that you can see. And of course, we think about what you're just talking about. The operating system has to be very lean, right? You can't have a terabyte of a grid sitting on a Pi.
right,
That's
yeah.
the thin form factor you're referring to. Yes. Let me see. Let me thump that again. Yep. Well, and then of course we thought about interaction because we had instructors, military instructors. You know, the students might be getting master's degrees or specialty degrees, certificates, or they could be getting their doctoral degree, right, at Air University. So the instructors like to look at a dashboard and extract data from it on the analytics, on how people are doing when they use these worlds, whether it's Pocket or shared on the hypergrid. How do we collect data, and perform analytics on that data? So we Spinoza Quinel wrote a voice app for Alexa so that instructors could ask questions, and he's showing in the white there. He's showing just a little image of what the database and the dashboard looks like when they're performing queries, right?
Right.
And so we're talking about a lot of architectural components coming together to accomplish what you were describing, which was the thin form factor and how do you get good performance on the Sim on a stick, which just happens to be on a Raspberry Pi, right, with an operating system and with graphics and with all the pieces you need. And then secondly, when you hypergrid and integrate, let me thump that again. There we go. So this is just showing for folks who are like, what's a Raspberry Pi? What are you talking about? We're talking about these little $39 machines that you can create either your own mobile app, your own computer, your own little robot, with some firmware built into it, and away you go. And so this is an example of it. And then the storage medium, of course, is these scan disks or whatever's appropriate, for that little bitty thing you're looking at there, right? And of
Isn't
course,
that
the Raspberry Pi is on the left. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, isn't there an American sort of thing a bit like a Raspberry Pi? Because
We think
Raspberry
of
Pi,
these as educational and research use. They're used
yeah,
in schools. They're inexpensive, and it allows students to tinker and to create.
yeah,
And so create your hardware and then run your software, whatever you can dream of on it. So if you're running Linux as your operating system, you get a little more flexibility here. You can do a thin format. We, Dr. Stricker, can do
Arduino
Windows
was
too,
what
and
I was.
that's a little different experience, right? And of course I was a little skeptical there because I know what it takes to actually install that. But and then here I did include a how it works slide. Let me see if I can get that visible. I hope I didn't thump that one time too
Yeah,
many.
yeah,
But in any event,
That
yep.
looks good. Yep.
there we are.
Good. Well, and so this still doesn't give you everything you want to know about it, but it certainly um, makes it a little more easier to understand. We're using a lot of open source tools as well as the Amazon cloud, and of course the REST API. And for my students, I take them through the dissertation on it, right? From the year 2000, because the REST API was first documented in a doctoral dissertation. And so for me, this isn't just about the hardware and the software and the virtual world experience and all the things I value. It's also this teaching moment that I can take students through to understand what did it take to make all these pieces possible? And then what do we need for the future? Where are we going? And then how will we envision this? Now, before we leave today, and this is like my last slide, right? I had some others that had more moody kinds of events, but somehow they didn't make it into the set. Um, my thought here is that in the future, I work for a university that does chiropractic education. So it's teaching doctors how to perform chiropractic corrections. And it's not just your old-fashioned way of thinking about it. Nowadays, they work on babies, on newborns. I had no idea. I was like, how does that work? And on the elderly and on folks who want to diet or folks who need a better lifestyle. They don't always have pain. Sometimes they just want to do preventive care to, strengthen how their body works, right? So they've asked me to do this last little thing, the most recent task that I'm working on. And I wanted to put a call to action out to your audience in case anyone's interested. They asked me to find an engineer that's interested in working with me on how to create a haptics. In other words, gloves or something that would
Yeah.
give a sense of force feedback and touch when someone in either a virtual world or VR or XR or AR or whatever reality we're talking about, that
Yeah.
you could be looking at the procedure on screen and yet touching a mannequin or a real world person and get that sense of touch. And I don't just mean because we can already do the sensors to poke something and feel it, right?
Yeah.
But this is a precision touch that not only does this, but also registers uh, a certain degree of pressure and side to side movement that you'd have in a massage, if you will. And then I need to also calculate how well they perform that procedure in the software for like the learning moment, right? And think of it this way. The CU Boulder, they have a dental school that uses VR to train their dental hygienists on how to clean teeth and how to use modern techniques to do this. And they
Yeah.
do all these procedures in VR. And it's just amazing. And it's a very powerful thing. Nowadays, they're working on emotion and on the thing you asked about, Mal, which is I want to see people in these spaces and I want to see the full range of expression on their faces.
Yeah.
Similar to that TV show on Fox, Lie to Me, the deception analysis, where you get these wide range of happiness and anger, and not because someone kicked off an animation, but because this is the response to a certain tone of voice or a certain way of feeling. Well, I'm working on the haptics piece. That's my this week's activity.
Yeah,
And if
I think in
yes, go ahead.
one of the news items I posted, not this week, but the other week, there was there's a method they have of the tactile interface is based on sound in some way.
Oh yes.
It makes you actually it's not music as we know it. There's something about sound and the frequencies they can modify it so that you feel like you're touching a surface that's not there. And I've seen another device on a news thing. I think it must be related. It's like a big mouse pad, but
Mm-hmm.
instead of having a flat surface, it's got like those rubbery sort of prong things, but very fine.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you push your hand down on the surface, and it also makes like the metal things. It makes an imprint, right? But this is rubbery, so you can move around on it. So you can use this pad um, to move your hand, but it's connected to whatever's in world, that you're feeling. So I don't know, maybe it will be a tabletop in world.
Mm-hmm.
So your hand would, like tracking with a mouse, it would go to somewhere on the virtual table that you wanted to be, but it would also enable you to feel. It would also be transmitting information that allowed your hand to feel the shape of something on the table. I'll have to try and, if I can, I'll track down the news items, but there's so
Yeah, that'd
many.
be cool. I would like that because I
Yeah,
kept thinking something what you're describing, only I need a way of registering what I'm touching. So I didn't know if I would need markers on like we give all the students mannequins, for example.
Yeah.
Because if you have people learning how to give massage or chiropractic from home during a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
How do you learn how to do these medical procedures at home? And so what we're trying to do is simulate better experiences and also capture the quality of that experience. How well did they do? And how can we give them advice on how to perfect their interaction with patients, that kind of thing. And so, of course, this would have benefits for the medical um, industry as far as online education. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned earlier, they have a limited access to a certain number of cadavers. Harvard, back in 2006, said they had access to 5 cadavers, students do. So they need lots of simulations that are virtual world or VR, to practice and get that gesture down, get the procedure down long before they work with the sample.
Lear, I hate to say it, but if you want something that you could buy now, you might have to look at the online sex industry. The
I thought
teledildonic,
of that too.
yeah, the teledildonic devices would be
Uh-huh.
something you could purchase. It's not in a research phase. They're selling them.
No, and I thought about that. I mentioned that
Yeah.
to my management because I said, I'm really out of touch when it comes to teledildonics. I have to confess, I have
Hmm.
limited domain knowledge, but
No
I'm
irony
aware that it
intended.
exists, obviously, because,
Right.
well, no, even when in '95, when I was conducting research then, there were quite a few articles about what was going on for thermals and for touch and,
Hmm.
for full body suits, etc. And while I highly respect everyone's work, I don't care about the industry.
Right.
Well,
Right.
actually,
Right.
I'm a
to be
geek.
honest,
Yep.
the sex industry is so often the place to look for innovation. It's
Uh-huh.
always been, it was the first to get into video. It was the
Well,
first
they have
to,
a high financial motivation, and
yeah.
Right.
they're trying to simulate experiences that matter to people. Absolutely. I thought about that. I just didn't know how to delicately do
Right.
that.
Right.
Delicate, how to delicately approach it in front of
Yeah,
some of the
that'd make a
language.
good paper, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Well, there've been a lot of things like that. That we had it on. Oh God, it was a few years ago now. They were selling sort of matching pairs of underwear for the male and
Yeah,
female. They
Right.
could wear them on different sides of the world
sure.
and be in touch. I think is Plyce's expression. But it was, yeah. I mean, all that stuff. It comes up there. Some of it gets forgotten about. And
Sure.
you have to keep an eye on these things because suddenly something invented for one thing
Oh yeah.
Sun, Sunday appears to be another. And I'll let you into a little secret here. It's totally different. But for weeks, I was trying to get a mask for my face to hide the fact that for the COVID thing, but
Uh-huh.
B, to hide the fact that my lips don't move on this mesh avatar. But the mask I eventually found, I hunted all over OpenSim and I could not find a face mask per se. I found this in an S&M shop on OS
Mm-hmm.
Grid or somewhere.
Sure.
It's meant, it's part of I don't know, a black vinyl kit, or it's a face mask for the bondage people or
Sure,
whatever.
sure.
But it's still a face mask. You don't know what it is. It's doing
Yep.
its job. So but in real life, there's a lot of things like that. You find little things that are suddenly no good for what they were meant to be, and they're suddenly useful for something else. You can just
Absolutely.
And when you're working on a
um,
budget, you just have to work with the tools you can find.
Oh, well, certainly. You have to realize for many years I was wearing Nebadon's hair dyed red, that Cody's biker hair, you bet.
Yep. Yep.
Because I just loved the way it moved, and so any of those
Flexi,
experiences,
yeah.
I'm okay with that. That none of that bothers me, and I don't worry about, is that feminine, is that masculine, is that delicate? I'm all about the discovery, right?
You
And
obviously
so,
you obviously remember Fleep
oh
from
yeah.
way back when. I haven't seen her for a long while, but her story about how she landed in Second Life for the first time and ended up in bed with a load of people is just
Yep.
hilarious. And then the way she says it too, it's just she followed the river, as it were.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, but they're always that's very amusing.
Good times, right?
Well, actually, when you think about it, the first 6 months you're in OpenSim or Second Life or any of these things, it's a very different world to get it. The learning curve may not be great, but it does take a long while to get used to the fact that you're embodying a character and being present in a society with that character that is at a remove to some extent from the real world. Not all, to what remove is a different matter, but there's always that slight remove. Some people more into connecting it to the real world, others more escapist, but it's just the fact that you're in that body.
Sure.
Yeah,
It is for most people, Mal, but it wasn't that long for me. I came for the New Media Consortium's, they opened their campus and ran a big event, and they had Electric Sheep create all their content. And I glommed on to one of their main programmers, and I attached myself to his hip, and I said, "Hey, I'm here to pick your brain." And next thing you know,
Nice.
I took 57 classes in World, and I spent my summer vacation in World. It was right after that, and I've completed 700 classes on Second Life skills, on OpenSim skills, on Mesh, on animation creation, on pretty much everything, and of course I'm not perfect at everything, but I instantly warmed to this entire experience and environment. I had no problems with it. I think other people might have, but you have to realize, to me, this was like magic. It was like magic opening up after what I'd experienced in the 90s.
Yeah. Oh, I think so too. I mean, it's just it's like you move to a new town. It takes you a few weeks to not learn how to walk, but just to be familiar with everything intuitively. And that's beyond the learning curve of learning to walk. It's learning the learning
Now
to
you
fly.
say that, but there was a time where everywhere we'd go, there'd be Mal Burns and Lear Lobo. You know what I mean? We couldn't go anywhere without the science base or anywhere, and we'd be, hey, there's a Mal.
Yeah. Well, in Second Life, my pussycat always lands on your feet somewhere.
I know it.
Yeah.
Now that's another wonderful moment.
You're my favorite legs.
Oh yeah.
Your virtual legs are my pussycat's favorite place to be.
Isn't that great?
I was thinking earlier, I was going to tramping because unlike me, although I've got the Oculus Go and I fiddle, so I know what it's all about. James actively uses his it's not called Oculus now. Is it the Quest 2? Is it?
Yeah, the Meta Quest. Yep.
Yeah, he's quite often in it. So I just I particularly thought he might have had some questions for you about about the Hominy. How do I pronounce this thing? Hominy Ikagi.
Ikigai. Okay, Ikigai. For those of us, when we gave that talk I gave one for ELK, and we had one for Virtual World's Best Practices in Education. Ikigai is we're showcasing 5 principles, which are very close to what we did in the Transcendental Romantic movement in this country, which is this. Find joy in the small things, be in the present here and now. These are just little philosophical witticisms that help us to reflect on why this experience matters and why it's important to us. And that's what we mean by Ikigai. And it's from a little book, which I did not read, I have to confess. But of course, all of the sayings I already knew. I had already embraced them. They were, start small. They're very simple points of view. And so we reflect all those in this Japanese build, and then also in how we think about our discovery in these spaces. So yes, James, what's your question?
Oh, I don't have a question. I just reflect that I enjoy the Quest a lot, and I appreciated what you said about there are complications of using Quest. There's complications of using Microsoft because of the corporation, but I am so excited to be able to experience this now. And who knows if I'm around tomorrow? So I'm all on board with it. I enjoy
speaking
it so
about
much.
Microsoft, my gosh, I try. They have this research meeting in AltSpace VR, right? And every Saturday night they want me to join, and of course I'm doing something else then. And so so I finally got in right after the AWE conference because one of the people kept saying, "Meet me in AltSpace VR." It took 3 logins, 3 special codes, 2 two-factor authentications, a password reset, and then a repeat of that process. It took 15 minutes to get in, and I said, "Well, I feel like I've given birth or something, And
I
then I
get
get in and everyone's gone.
Yeah, I
Well,
get all their events, and I never go to any of them. It's just too much. You
yeah.
want somewhere you can click and go
Oh,
quickly.
And
And
something about
anyway,
it,
AltSpace VR makes me my brain doesn't work well with it. I get a little nauseous in AltSpace, and I don't get nauseous in other apps. I don't know what the difference is.
it's the movement, and we have that
Yeah.
same movement
Yep.
in our app too. We have lots of different kinds of movements, and you get to
Mhm.
choose which one you do. I
Mhm.
noticed there you don't have as many choices.
Right.
I
Right.
did go around an opera singer's place, Lawrence, and it was really beautiful. But you know what? I looked down at the food and I said the textures are overstretched.
Mhm.
I saw
Yep.
it with the
Yep.
designer's eyes, where all the textures are stretched, and you go, that food
Yeah.
is real unhappy right now.
Yeah. Has your team looked at VR chat as a possible platform?
I've looked at a little of
Yeah.
it, and I've looked at a lot of commentary about it, but
Mhm.
I haven't chatted with someone in it. I've looked at some humor making fun of it.
Right.
And
Right.
I love the idea of all these things, but I don't need I don't need VR to be able to talk to someone.
Right.
Um, I need VR to have an experience, and it has to, and a very deep and probing one that leaves me with a memory trigger that helps me have a learning moment. That's my or a research moment where I can manipulate time and gravity and space and
Yep.
reflect on something I don't know,
Yep.
or like the Matrix, instead of having where we hook them up and jack them up and give them all this knowledge in one burst. I actually go through some of the experiences and then remember them. So the notion of being any of the chat worlds and talking to other people, I'm over chatted, I think. I
Mhm.
I chat too often.
No, I meant as
That
a
sounds
VR as
terrible,
a
doesn't it?
VR and virtual world platform. I've
Ah,
found some really exciting things in VR chat.
well, that's good. See,
There's a whole
I don't
flight
know.
simulator base. It's
Oh, wonderful.
amazingly programmed. It
I love
works
flight
well.
simulators.
Yeah.
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 Now, see, now you're talking
Yep.
because you're talking about an experience.
Right.
So that's wonderful that it integrates all these experiences, and then you
Yep.
can also chat.
Right.
That I hadn't seen. What I've seen of it's
it's
been very
probably
limited.
And
What?
VR
pretty
chat is probably
controversial. Right.
it's probably the
Oh,
closest, James, isn't it, to what we know with OpenSim and Second Life, Science Space, and
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
It's very much a social platform.
And it's still a
Uh,
walled garden. It's not a. It's not in any way multi multi-platform. I mean,
yeah.
you can't
But
set up
compared,
your own VR chat thing on your own
I
server.
bought about 40 or 50 games in Oculus to try all these different
Mhm.
experiences and
Mhm.
to think about, and so a couple of them made my family and I queasy, and we thought
Yep.
about that,
Yep.
and of
Yep.
course it is possible for anyone to become queasy at some point. So I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say first time queasy, all done. Oh no. Instead, I think about what does it take to get to comfort,
Mhm.
and then what does it take to help others discover how to be comfortable and then to get the most out of the experience. But I have to admit, I psychoanalyze everything I touch,
Mhm.
so I'm not a lot of fun to be with. We might as
well,
well be friends.
might
But
not be fun, but you're awfully interesting.
I am fun, but I'm not fun when I'm going, hey, this would be
Yeah.
better if the perms were, or that wasn't stretched out of shape, or, the sound is a little too loud right here and too soft over there, and, the spatialized experience, or what about, we have two tools coming up. The Quest 3 is in development, right? And of
Mhm.
course, everyone's
The
going, when will
Cambria.
that be?
Right.
No, two things.
Oh.
The
Oh, that's right.
Cambria is a developer platform.
It's the high
The
end one.
Quest 3
Right.
is like next year or in 2 years, whatever, the next consumer platform. So when I think of Quest 3, I think of, and maybe they mean the same thing, but the literature I was looking at in the last week or two distinguish them. The Cambria's this year, second quarter, they say,
Mhm.
although
Mhm.
let's face it, there's not a lot of second quarter left, right?
No.
Like a week or two. But and then of course the Quest 3 I thought was either late this year or next year. And I think of that as a consumer space.
Right.
Hopefully compatible with all these games I bought or I'm in big trouble, right?
Right.
spend $500, $600 on games, But I just went nuts at Christmas. I was like, woohoo! And then I said, Andy, you have to have some too. And oh, my family has to have some too. And everyone has to have some. Woohoo! So Meta really likes me, I suspect.
Yeah. You get a
Because
car,
I
and you get a
definitely was a
car,
consumer.
and you get
Yeah,
a car.
everyone gets a car.
Everyone gets a
But
car.
that's yeah, and of course I didn't see that Whoopi or that what's her name? You know who I mean. When she did that, but I was thinking instead of Ready
Oprah.
Player One when he
Right.
gave away the DeLorean car.
Right.
Oh yeah, I'd take one.
I'll take one.
I love I love Back to the Future. But anyway, well, I want to thank you guys for inviting me today to share with you and what we're doing at Virtual Harmony. And I want to apologize to the public for Mal not having video feeds. We had the two tornadoes, and of course, it destroyed the equipment. And then we weren't sure we were going to bring it back online unless we did it in the Amazon cloud. And most of us can't afford putting many 18 to 36 terabytes of data in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can imagine what the cost would be like. And so, even with a good economic model, that's not a hobby. So, so we're fortunate to be back online, and we're taking a little break to feed our spirits and our families who've been so supportive. They put up with a lot while we're constantly going, right? And so, I would put a shout out to everyone and say, keep on dreaming and thinking of wonderful new technologies and all these simulations, the conferences. Let us know about new conferences. We love them. Back to you, Mel.
Yeah. It's been very like a presentation at the end there.
I know. You can tell when I run low on steam or I need a bathroom. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's a wrap.
Yep.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, it's been wonderful having you again. It's like old times because we used to have you on this show quite a lot, actually, didn't we?
You can grab my avatar again if you want another virtual audience. I'm cool with it. I share. That's my motto.
The camera for making it is right on the side of the stage here.
Cool beans.
You just
We'll
click on
do
it.
that before we leave.
It
Then.
makes an NPC for you. Yeah.
All right.
Right. Yeah. It seems like I had a lot more to talk about, but oh, yeah.
Well, you can if you want. I don't really have to run. I just I know the audience has a certain time span. I once told a class, I said, when you all get tired or you need a break, let me know. And 30 people stood and walked out of the room. And it wasn't because I wasn't fun. It was that it had been so many hours. It was time.
I'm totally exhausted when we get off these things, but on the other hand, while we're still on them, it's
wonderful.
You're on your own roller coaster, especially when it's so interesting. I did remember you said something to me earlier, and I don't think we're on air, and I hope I hope it's just tell me if it's something you don't want to mention. Didn't you say that as a result of I was going to ask you a bit more about Orb, but I mean, there's obviously so much going on there. You must have enjoyed that tremendously. But didn't you say you've been approached by somebody at NASA for another thing as a result of actually at the Orb conference? Or did I?
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about. In one of the sessions, they had a medical session, and they had the team that supports the NASA crews for both the flight crew and then the space station crew. And I got to one of the panel speakers was unable to attend the conference, and he joined me in the chat, and we were talking back and forth, and he PM'd me, gave me a private message inviting me to contact him. And that was Major General Joseph Schmid the third, I think, out of NASA. Yep. And he's just wonderful. You have to realize, to see leaders who are comfortable using technology, chatting comfortably with them, like we do in virtual worlds where we have this back channel chatter in the local chat, comfortably talking about things, augmenting the experience, describing what it felt like to have these experiences. That's really the magic of these virtual conferences. And that was a powerful memory for me, because he shared what it's like to be one of the surgeons supporting these women and men who go out into space, and then also being one of the first people to be holoported in September 2021. which of course they're holograms, they're virtual representations of self, appeared around the bodies of the astronauts. And I saw a little film clip of it where you see the hologram of the person in the left side coming at the person who's floating in space on the right side, right? And they're all interacting. And those are really wonderful experiences because let's face it, if we thought telemedicine was rough during the pandemic, where you couldn't go to see a doctor and get treated for routine things, you had to be on Zoom or some HIPAA controlled, safe, confidential environment. Imagine being on the space station and needing a doctor, needing a consultation with your surgeon. And so I love that. And so he reached out to me and asked me to contact him. My one problem is I want to say something important and useful, right? So I decided to think about it before I did, and that's the shy part, the part that always wants to have relevance and to not waste anyone's time, but to also be very specific and interesting, So yeah, so that was a beautiful part of that conference is we networked, we made friends. I got to know an opera singer, I got to know General Schmidt, and I met also they're working on accessibility and disability and diversity in XR, VR, AR, and virtual worlds. So they've started a new GitHub for it. I didn't know if you were aware of this. I don't have the address for it. I was just looking at my notes before we joined.
The All People themselves have launched a surprise competition in that area too. I think that was the first.
Which one?
The first day. They
The
announced,
United Nations or?
No. Or on the first
okay.
day, they announced. I can't remember. Basically a contest. With quite a big prize. For I suppose innovation in the field. I don't know. Of course, there were quite a lot of prize winners there anyway. But
sorry, Mel. I'm going to give a link to James there. I'll put it in the little note. The United Nations has a competition out, but it's mostly for kids. It includes college students, but to me, those are kids. In any event, but it's on United Nations and sustainability using virtual worlds, VR, AR, XR, you name it, all the R's. And of course, it has prizes, but it's on 17 different areas. The initiatives for wicked problems and famine and climate change and you name it, all the different issues that exist in the world and how technology like what we're currently experiencing, how that might help with sustainable development goals. So it's the SDG Metaverse Prize.org is the link. So one word, SDG stands for Sustainable Development Goals, Metaverse Prize.org. It's worth checking out, even if you don't qualify for those age groups. You may know people who do.
I must say it's very heartwarming that, and you've been in this business for a long while, to see people like Philip Rosedale having to attend, on several different sessions at the World Economic Summit.
Mm-hmm.
People like him are now talking to people seriously in that league, world leaders, and they weren't talking NFTs and blockchain stuff by and large. It was general sort of things. The fact that some of these audiences, really serious top-level audiences, are really beginning to take this stuff seriously. Mm-hmm. They're not falling for the Zuckerberg stuff. But they are realizing that things are changing, and that these new methods of communication and society are gonna be very important, especially in a collapsing world with environmental, not to say other problems. So some of it's depressing, but some of it is very rewarding too, because you think, well, God, 20 years ago we were shouting in thin air to
right.
a certain extent, but now even the word metaverse is used by some people. They don't know what it is, but they've vaguely heard of it now. It's changing. It's all changing. So I think we're on the cusp. If we're around, we're going to be on the cusp of a big change with all this stuff. Here's
I have
hoping.
something else for you there, Mal. You made me think of it. The AWE conference, I think
Yeah,
that's what you're calling OR. Um,
yeah.
they also launched the Qualcomm $100 million funding, the prizes for using their Snapdragon Spaces, they call it. And it's at spaces.qualcomm.com. And that's worth checking into if you're a developer or designer or someone who's interested in funding,
Yeah, I
because they're
wonder if that's the
offering
one.
up to $100 million for funding.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the one I thought of because it was something that AWR and uh, they actually announced on the very first day.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, they ran a show on it on the last day, and it was just so cool. And of course, I've linked it for you for later
oh yeah,
review.
yeah. Well, Evo Henning was part of that.
Hmm.
She was one of the actresses in it.
Wonderful.
I've been talking to her in the lead up for that for weeks because
Oh, good.
she's a major mover in the OMI initiative. Um, I always go to the roundup meeting every week just to check what's going on there.
Oh,
But,
wonderful.
she said, "Oh, we're going to be doing this mixed. Is it theatre? Is it immersion? What is it you're doing?" But there's no stopping her either, actually. So yeah,
Well, it looks like augmented reality, and it integrates with Unity or Unreal Engine 5. So
yeah,
what's interesting is about all these tools is regardless of whether it's virtual content in a virtual space or whether it's virtual content out perceived in the real space, against the physical world, all of it seems to be using some of the same tools for integration. So if we can figure out the common denominators between them, we can lighten our load, and repurpose ourselves for all these different integrations. That's what I think of. Yeah.
yeah, me too. I mean, people used to tell me that sort of say to me that sort of, oh, augmented reality and virtual reality, they're different. They're very different things, and of course, in base sense, they are, but they're all part and parcel of the same sort of move. I mean, imagine a pair of glasses that can be opaque, transparent, or semi-opaque. Then you've got glasses, you've got augmented reality, and you've got virtual reality, because you would someday have that kit that can adapt to both environments. And as you say, maybe some of the tools that enable you to interact with the real world via AR may transpose into virtual reality too, so they become more and less seamless. I
Yes.
always say the archaeological thing of imagine you discover a Stonehenge sort of thing. You can go in to visit in the real world and you can read all the signs and it tells you all about it. Or you can put your glasses on and you can get augmented extra information via augmented reality. There's not enough space at the site to put enough signs up, but they can put more up, using augmented reality. But
Right.
then, if you want to go even further, you can turn the whole thing opaque and visit a virtual recreation of this ancient village or whatever it is. So you can move through those layers, into, from the real into the fully virtual. The same with things like maps. You can look at Google Maps or something and you can go down from satellite level to terrain level to rooftop view and then down into street view. But at the moment they're trying to make the interim level a kind of mirror world like virtual, so that you can come out of street view and you move up a bit and you're actually in a virtual rendering of the city you're in, and then you move up from there and you're in the maps layer. So
Hmm.
again, it's the sort of thing of merging them all together, starting in one place and moving up or down or back and forth. So
Right.
eventually it's seamless.
And some of those new features, I was catching some of those little YouTube programs while I was eating on, new features for Google Maps, blah blah blah. And of course, I love the one that said you could map out your backyard, your roof. You could get
Yeah,
the dimensions, the actual. So you can do all of these things that are very practical with all this virtual data that then, allows you to purchase the right amounts of material.
yeah,
And I would love to see all that integrated so you could throw that into like a CAD tool or some sort of tool for performing what would that look like, for interior design or exterior design, right? Yeah, I'd love to see those integrations.
I don't know whether it's Google, but I think there is some mapping systems where you can, they've obviously been able to scan externally, but you
Hmm.
can actually upload statistics, data like floor plan or whatever, to enhance what the information they've got about your house, for example. Whether you want to, privacy wise, is another matter. But I think they're making allowances for the fact that you could do this. If you wanted to, and because people have tried to build mirror walls before, where your
Oh
own
yeah.
house, you can claim it
Well,
virtually. And
now Mal, that brings up a point. So what's the difference? Some of your listeners may want to know what's the difference between a mirror world and a digital twin, which is the hot new term for mirroring real life in a virtual space.
well, where do we go? I don't know.
I
To
know,
me,
I know.
to me, to me, what do they call it? A virtual human, digital human, or something?
Well, it was
It,
the digital twin being the
it's the
space,
twin.
right, that mirrors.
Oh,
So, like digital twin universities look like the main campuses. You get
ah,
this sense of authenticity. And I had to ask myself, I said, are we changing our terminology, repurposing it so people don't get distracted by all the acronyms or what?
it's a good point. I mean, I remember Twinity. I think it's still going
Hmm.
actually, which was maybe it's a virtual world. It's not. It's a mirror world because they recreated New York Times Square and they recreated parts of London here, and they're pretty loud. Well, passable avatars. They did have legs, but and everybody who spoke was in a word balloon like a comic strip. So novelty
Oh
factor.
boy.
But it becomes very clear. Um, um, and again, I did another one with I was invited into one. I forgot what it was called. It was we were even I was even featured on French television
Hmm.
because they made an avatar for me that was totally photorealistic based on photos.
Hmm.
And this was a beta, and I went in with them to help demonstrate stuff, and they sent cameras in to the virtual world. I can't remember. Um, the French TV has sent television cameras in to do an interview and a whole article promoting this sort of thing. And when I actually managed to get a clip of the French TV program, the French news clip,
Hmm.
I just decided I don't really want a photographic avatar at all because it was so obviously me,
Hmm.
warts and all, and I thought, I don't I think I sort of prefer a little bit of artistic license on
Well,
this.
the difficulty for me is um, if it lacks animation and gesture and facial recognition, where you're
Yeah,
making all the faces you normally make. Because I make a lot of faces. I
yeah,
don't
me
like
too.
to be on
Yeah.
camera for that very reason. Because
Oh,
if I get, well, if someone says something and I have a look of horror on my face in response to it, I sometimes want to disguise that with my voice. I don't want
I
people to really know what I'm thinking there. Yeah, that's a little too honest for me.
yeah,
And
I laugh
I want
my
to be
way through
kind and diplomatic, you know what I'm saying? And
it.
so the when Barbara Truman had her photogrammetry avatar made, where they took 90 cameras and photographed her from most angles, and then created a version of her with clothes on, right? And she
Yeah,
wore it. Like you had noted, the lips didn't move, and while she could gesture, she had weight painting and, she could animate and gesture. Those weren't her animations and her gestures, the
yeah,
ones that are natural to her. And so it's kind of eerie. It's like watching yourself and someone else is wearing you or something. It has a sense of the uncanny valley and some disturbance in how you represent yourself, how you feel about yourself, and the fact that, gee, I no longer look as comfortable as I feel.
sure.
There's something disturbing about it for some of us. I suppose if we were supermodels airbrushed and our gestures were just lanky and elegant, maybe we'd go with it, maybe not. Maybe we'd
Uh,
still feel disturbed, but
well, to
but
me, to me, that thing I mentioned with the map layers, where you go up to
uh-huh.
the street view, and instead of going straight to rooftop view, you would go to what I would call a mirror world view.
Right.
But everything is still as real as it is in street view or in rooftop view. It's just it's used virtual reality to model it, but it's an exact replica of the real world. So, you know, people who don't want to necessarily go down to street view and view photographic wraparound can actually use a virtual reality simulation between that and then going up to the more detailed maps. But, you know, it means having everything modeled, whether it's done from photographs and AI to make it convincing or whatever, or what method it's done by, I don't know. But the thing is, once they've done it, you're going to have to, you're going to have to figure out, well, are replicas of our virtual selves going to inhabit that mirror world? In other words, if I walk down the high street to a certain shop, and I'm wearing my, you know, I've got my phone or Apple Watch on me or something tracking me, is there a kind of virtual avatar in what will eventually be a mirror world that will actually walk that same trip with me? So that when they, not only will the system knowing I'm going out and having a walk, but I'll be the mirror world will see me go out of my house and walk down to the shop, and if ultimately buy something and come back. Somewhere down the line, maybe a century away, I don't know, that will be some kind of reality. I mean, we'll have, with quantum computers, we'll just have the power to evoke, you know, we won't be worried about.
Well, I don't want to look like myself. I want to be my ideal self. And my ideal self is not perfect. You'll notice even my avatar is not perfect. That's by intent, not by accident.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. It's what you feel comfortable with that really matters, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, my Second Life early avatar was sort of it's pretty crude, but I mean, to me, it looked like me, and I portraying as a younger self, you know. And I slowly tidied it up over the years. I've never done much with it, although this one, of course, was done based on photos, sort of thing. But yeah, no, you don't. I agree totally. You don't. If I could go on a phone and have a flat phone and appear like in the first Star Wars, where you know the characters appeared as holograms standing on the table and talking, if I could do something like that with my real body, I'd be fine. You know, but like I say, in a semi-fictional world, like a virtual world of created, yeah, the mix. I don't know. You would want your real self, would you, James?
I already
I'm
am
okay
my
with
real
my real
self.
hair.
Yeah,
Yeah, he is.
I'm all
He's
real right here.
authentic, let me
Right?
tell you. I could handle my real hair because now I can almost sit on it. I'm like, oh yeah, you feel so good. You grew well during the pandemic.
Your avatar, I
But
don't
that's
know what
it.
it is. Your avatar is pretty simple, but it's also very, very stylish. I never quite put
But
my
I'm a
finger on
classic,
it.
you know, and a lot of people are offended by classic. They're like, ooh, ugly. And I'm like, ooh, so me.
Very, very, very recognizable. I know you anyway.
Yeah,
Well,
that's it.
especially with the hat on.
Uh-huh.
But you know, actually, the film I took of you at VWVPE, which we might as well plug. Leah did an interview with 5 years ago. She won something called the Thinker Award, didn't you? And being as it's 5 years later, there's a habit. I've done them in the past, but we didn't this year, where the winner for 5 years ago is brought on again to say, you know, what's happened to your life since, kind of thing. And it was Liz turn this year. I haven't got a clip handy to show you now, but James filmed it for the conference, but I also filmed the backup copy, and I filmed it at night, which was actually the natural setting of the region, as opposed to the official films, which were all in daylight. And Lear here, right, it was in Second Life, so she was not wearing what you see now. She was wearing an astonishingly wonderful thing. It looked so great at night. It was well lit. You just looked like a star in a spotlight. With you had a really incredible hat on, if I remember. You had a shoulder pet as well, not that one.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and you just walked on the stage there, and there was the interview. Kevin just sitting down, recovering from all his other duties, and then you were there in the You were looking good. You were looking good,
Well, I
girl.
was wearing the prize from the Space Menagerie. If you went
Oh,
and did the game and you went to all the different exhibits floating in space, you found the animals and you did all the stuff, you won that hat. And I love the hat. You know, Broom made it, and she did such an amazing job. She had animals on it and compasses and all this steampunk stuff. It just
yeah.
had all these toys and it was like an entire experience on a hat, you know.
I've been Second Life. I haven't been there for a long while, except occasionally I'll
Mhm.
pop in with my as my pussycat avatar. But I've got a whole collection of top hats.
Oh
Um,
yeah, me too.
it was a real, yeah, it was a real thing to. I don't know, just it seemed an obvious thing to collect, and so many people were making them. But yeah,
I have a
you know,
hat tree with like a dozen hats. They go out in every direction, and it's like a piece of art. It's beautiful, wrought iron, And then I have tons of hats either hanging on the wall or I have hat boxes. I have hat pins that could double as weapons with hat pin guards, and
Hmm.
I collect. Yes, I do in life, and there for many years I wore a hat everywhere I went. Yep.
I don't. Well, I usually wear a baseball cap or something. I've got quite a lot of hats, but
No,
I
I
don't.
don't
I
really. I
don't.
only have one or two baseball cats, and one of them is more of one of the British ones, the Peaky Blinder type. I
Oh,
have for the
oh,
Beatles.
yeah, I got a few of those. It's funny though. I've got a few hats, but I'm
uh,
terrible at choosing them. So I end up just wearing a bog standard baseball cap that I always seem to
I
wear.
just love hats. They're so just, especially fedoras, and wide
Oh yeah,
brim. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They. I don't know. I feel a bit self-conscious wearing the flamboyant ones. I think, oh, everybody's looking at you.
Well,
And
they're
I'd rather
black.
be shy, be
The
shy like
color's
you.
not flamboyant.
Yeah,
And they
that's good.
actually look stylish with my red hair. So,
Yeah,
yeah, in life. Yep.
yeah. Same with me. We're redheads. Yeah, which is
See
good.
there.
This is always good. Apparently, the royal couple, what's its name, Edward and what's
Yes.
it? Um, they've revealed their new baby daughter for a year old. You know,
Oh,
the,
yes.
the headline on one of the papers, after Harry, of course, really, so yes, she's a redhead. The royal family's got another redhead on its hands. Because Harry was always a bit of an anomaly with that. They've got red hair in the blood somewhere, but
Lilibet is her name. Yes.
Lilibet, that's it. That's a lovely
That's
name
it.
too. A sort of tribute to the Queen herself, Elizabeth, in a way. Lilibet is sort of.
That's cute. That's a cute
Yeah.
name.
And I got, oh God, I shouldn't say this, but I got given a clip the other day for this Real World artist who's celebrating 50 years of a particular comic character, basically. Um, a few years ago, it was probably about, well, before the pandemic anyway, he presented one of his graphic novels to the same, not Harry and what's it, but the other one. Is it Edward and Kate? Kate, is it?
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, they were visiting, up where he lives, and he presented them with one of his graphic novels, and it was filmed, obviously. And Brian, I don't think the Royal Protocol people had a clear enough word with Brian because he handed the book and Edward thanked him and everything else like that, and then Brian put his hand on the guy's shoulder like a hug, and you don't do that to the royal family.
Yeah. Different
Uh,
protocol.
yeah, exactly. So I presume that film has never been put anywhere other than in private collections. But
Hmm.
he didn't seem bothered. He didn't seem bothered at all. But I noticed it immediately because I thought, yeah, I've never seen that, let alone a friend of mine doing it. They're sticklers for protocol.
Hmm. Very much
But
so.
yeah, so funny. But yes, Lilibet's the redhead, so that is cool. That is cool.
Lilibet Diana.
I
Yes.
like I like those two actually, that couple. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, come to think of it, we're still live. I'm just talking as if we've
We
gone
are
off air.
live. Yes.
Yes,
I was
we are
wondering. I
live.
wasn't
And
going to
we're
say
we're
anything,
just
but
about
yes.
going as long as a Avengers movie.
Yeah, I
Uh-oh.
know. 2 hours 40 minutes. Yeah, we've done it. Yeah,
Yep.
we are the Met Avengers now.
Yep. Yep.
Part one.
Part 1.
Well, guess what we're going to do in Met Avengers Part 2?
Uh-oh.
Because we're going to have to destroy everything and then rebuild it.
And rebuild
And
it.
then make
As
an
long as we
escape.
don't have to die, you know what I'm saying here? Because I'm just way too busy for that.
Yeah, not enough time.
Time waits for no one, as the song says. Okay, I think we better call it a wraps, actually. It's so easy to go on talking, and especially when you're live and you've forgotten you are. It's been wonderful having you here, Leah.
Thank you.
Any final questions from you, James? Or
No, I'm good. Thank you.
we're just right. Oh, I can't wait for the next time. I promise we'll make it twice the length.
Sounds good. Well, it'll be before OSCC, I suspect. We'll talk about that.
Right before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why not? Why not? Actually, we're trying to arrange something like in the weeks prior to ICC
Yeah.
to tie in
Sounds good.
tie in a bit of advanced publicity there as well. And you should. I don't know whether you can, but drop this app demo on James. Is that possible? So you can see it.
A video or what? What do you mean?
Are
Oh,
you talking
I
about the
can't.
Quest thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
The only way I could see it and be in there and do things was to have an Oculus account and have Andy. We're part of the dev team, so we can download and access it. But it's a special limited beta, if that's what you're asking. So it's not the kind of thing I can port and give you. You know, I'm so sorry. That is one of
I
the.
completely understand. Right.
Yeah, no, I thought it was like Apple, where it's test drive, and if you go,
And I
test
can't
drive,
change the software because I'm testing the user experience. So I get an update, and we update. Andy there for a while was updating every other day,
Wow.
so the software was constantly moving. That's what I mean by it's a little more like an alpha than a beta. While all the components are in there for the entire thing, we keep customizing the experience because I keep running into, you know, I have a limited workspace in some rooms, so I don't have the ideal space to have the ideal movement. Not just am I seated, but I'm crunched up, right? And so I'm testing that, and I can break things faster than you can talk about them, right? And so, and that's my gift. And so I'm going through testing everything, and you have to realize I've tested 24 massive multiplayer online role-playing games and wrote test reports and attempted to break things, get multiple accounts. I did it for The Sims Online, for Star Wars Galaxies, for all the major games. And I love doing that sort of thing. And I'm intense when I do it. I'll get multiple accounts and I'll do things that are just not possible in the game construct.
Until you do them, yeah.
Yeah. So that's really what I'm doing, and it's a little unusual. And of course, I keep running into I can break things, and then I talk to Andy, and we work on it, and he works on it. He's been really, really busy. He's supporting education and working with, we have a new space program opportunity coming out from his work perspective, and so he's providing guidance. And he does a lot. He writes a blog on artificial intelligence every week for leaders around the country. And so he is so super busy. I always feel guilty when I say, "Hey, Andy, could you fix blah, blah, blah?" Because, of course, he has to do that in the dark. And he gets up at 2 a.m. to do it,
He can.
Oh, but
he spent the whole evening breaking things, and then he has to work through the night fixing them.
I know it's sad. Well, he sleeps a little bit first because he has a farm to feed. Then he goes to work, right, on base, and so he's hard working, and a wonderful researcher, and totally committed to all of this work. But so to answer your question, I would only be able to add you if you were part of the dev team, and then you'd have all these responsibilities that you probably wouldn't want.
And that's what I assume. I would think a person could
But
approach you.
When we do an open
volunteer.
beta, absolutely. Yep. Or if we actually just launch it, which is really what a lot of people do with their open betas.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I used to get a lot of things on, including virtual worlds, on what's it called, on Apple, especially on the iPod. They have a test flight. It's called. And once you register with that, you can actually get invites from various app makers to quite literally test flight apps.
And I
That's
don't know
cool.
why. I thought Oculus had that going with it too, but I might be wrong.
If they do, I'm unaware of it. And it's always possible that's true. I'm only aware of the user base, and then I'm aware of the developer features, but I only have a limited access to what we produce, right? And that
Yeah.
was by invitation from Andy, the developer. So you have to realize in these closed worlds, and this is a problem education has too. Since they closed the Oculus for Business, it's not like you can get accounts that are generic and then share them with others so that people can grab your stuff and try it out. It has to be tied to their account, either through a purchase. Well, it's always a purchase. Sometimes it's for $0, right? So
Yeah.
for $0, I purchased this and I get updates and I'm part of this beta. And I had to sign all kinds of agreements, and then they give you all kinds of warnings. The one piece of good news is that ours is rated for either everyone or for people over 14. I forget which. And that's
Yeah.
only because we have a bathhouse, right? In a Japanese, but it's not like
Cool.
you're throwing off your clothes and jumping in it because you don't have a body, right?
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
I
What is
haven't
it
seen
about
how the others look. We haven't done the multiplayer thing because when the tornadoes interfered with his line,
Yeah.
that meant you must have an internet connection to use the Oculus, in case you're wondering.
Oh yeah. But
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
I would think upload speeds are almost as important download speeds with that as well. I would think.
Well,
You know.
before you go into it, you fully download the new version and then you have it on your device. This is why there's a limitation. So like in Second Life or in World of Warcraft or any of these online spaces, the content is located out on the cloud and you get a certain amount of it cached locally, right?
Yeah.
To optimizing your performance. And then in game worlds, you're sending updates of your behavior back and forth
Yeah.
and scoring and
Exactly.
progress, but you're not constantly re-downloading parts of the world. That would be inefficient for a massive multiplayer online game.
Yeah.
In virtual worlds, we allow the content to always be changing, so you're not getting advanced downloads of everything except that which is around you, right?
Yeah. It
And
takes around
so
you. Stuff.
so
Yeah.
that it has a dynamic nature, whereas game like World of Warcraft is not dynamic in the sense of its content constantly changing. You're not constantly upgrading the terrain around your
So,
body.
so most of the stuff in Oculus is non-dynamic.
Well, I think of it that way, yes. So
Yeah.
you have to
Right.
ask yourself, when other people join you in that tea house, how do you represent them? At first, it was difficult, and now they've given a better version of an avatar, and I created one. But my problem is I don't know if it's only going to be available in AltSpace VR, in generic VR apps throughout Oculus, or whether it's going to be specific just to my Virtual Harmony one. And so the notion of avatar means something different in each tool you upload. And so there's something for Meta as itself, and then there's something for these specific apps. And since no one else is logged in at the same time I haven't tested that multiplayer experience yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you got a Ready Player Me avatar, perchance? I presume that might be something you looked into.
No, I don't think I have a Ready Player Me.
It's a portable avatar, but as far as I can
Yeah.
tell, it only works with things like hubs and web worlds at the moment because
Okay.
it's an interop thing. And
I have been
more,
in Hub.
if you go to Ready Player Me's site, sorry, you can upload photos and stuff and make the avatar, but they also have a huge portal of places you can go using that avatar, and they don't own those places. It's just it's like Maria Kovalov's Hyperica used to be. It's a list of destinations that support that avatar, and it's pretty
That's
huge.
cool.
It's pretty
Yeah.
huge. So they're one of the few companies that are open enough to they focus on making the avatar. Everything else they're supporting
Yeah,
is
on the
open
site it
source.
says used by 2,500 developers. So I love that notion. And the ones I'm looking at, one looks a little like one of those clocks, the cat clock where the eyes go back and forth, the Felix the cat, only with big Mickey Mouse ears. So I'm guessing you don't have to use a photo of yourself.
No,
This is good.
the first one I made with Philip actually, although
Oh, good.
because he put me onto it, and
Yeah.
like his avatar that he made there, it takes your face, yeah,
Hmm.
but it doesn't, and it's very, very recognizable as your face. But it's
Wow.
not photographically recognizable
Oh,
like the
good.
Uncanny Valley. It's like an extremely good cartoon caricature that
That's good.
you can't mistake for being anybody but you. But when you look closely at it, but on the other hand, it doesn't stand out a mile as like the Uncanny Valley thing. But as I say, there's a limit. I mean, there are some other worlds that support it. I think the Vicadia and the new replacement for Tivoli, which are all high fidelity offshoots, I think they support it. Don't know
Cool.
whether I don't know whether Science Base does, but mostly it's web worlds. But I like the idea because it is, it's a decent portable avatar, especially if you're going through web worlds all the while, WebXR as it were.
Well, I really loved using Make Human to make an avatar. I did make one for a VR simulation I was working on, and they have done a marvelous job with that tool,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've used it, but in an hour or less, you can make an avatar, rig the bones, you have skin on, you have clothes on, you have hair on, all the things that can be quite difficult when you're making something from a Gumby like, start of a naked person. Yep.
This avatar is a total mesh. Both
Yes.
actually.
Yes. And
But
when you get done, you get a sense of,
that's why the lips
yeah,
don't move and things like that. So
yeah.
yeah, I'm terrible at rigging and doing that sort of stuff. And Adam Frisbee tried to teach me Unity, for example, but
Hmm.
20 years earlier I could have done it, but the learning curve now.
Sure.
You know,
That's
it,
understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, well, guys, you can do everything. It's like a page maker for 3D and virtual
Hmm.
worlds. It's got everything in it. For any of those, doesn't matter what you're doing, you can alter it there. Basically, you even do video in there. So crazy
Yep.
days. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to more crazy days, especially with you.
Sounds great.
We will wrap because, as James will tell you, I have a habit of saying we'll wrap now and then getting into a whole new conversation. So I will say thank you very much for being here. It's been absolutely fine, wonderful. We will be getting together again soon. Thanks to James for bearing with us because it's even longer than most of our epics.
Woohoo, James.
Yep.
Yeah. And yes, to listeners, viewers at home, you can replay this anytime on my Mal Burns YouTube channel and anywhere else it gets embedded, basically. And yeah, we will. Well, I don't know when our next show will be. It might be next week or it might be later. We're here every week with the news, but in World Review is when we can make it, kind of thing. But it will be soon for sure. And don't forget, if you like traveling on the in Open Sim and on the Hypergrid, Wednesday at noon Second Life time, or grid time is what I'm supposed to say, isn't it? It's just but yeah, I don't even know what it is in UTC at the moment.
Pacific. Pacific.
Yeah, it's Pacific. That's the best way to put it, isn't it? Anyway, yeah, we're meeting OS Grid, which is one of the major, OpenSync grids, and just type in HG space Safari, and you will get to the clubhouse where it all takes off from. And we'll be visiting, interesting enough, wolf territories. And if you were watching us, was it last week when we had Lone Wolf on?
Yep.
You'll know what to expect. I don't know which of the 700 regions we're going to be landing on, but apparently some of them. So yeah, that will be fun. And yeah, as I say, you pick up the landmarks at the clubhouse and then follow through. And a quick reminder too is if you ever get stuck getting to the Hypergrid Safari landing point on OS Grid, this region here, Avacon Grid Safari region, is actually the secondary backup region. So if it's ever offline there, it immediately gets transferred to a little island over the way from our studio here, where there's another clubhouse. There's probably clubhouses
Mm-hmm.
over the world. There's loads of Thursdays, so there's probably as many clubhouses as there are Thursdays. But makes a new avatar for every time there's a new clubhouse. Maybe that's the way it works. You join us for that if you can. Otherwise, we will be back. We'll be back here next week with the news and maybe another in-world review. And but we will give Leah a break for at least 2 weeks, won't we?
Take care. Thanks.
Okay. With that, Issachar, thanks to James, thanks to Leah, and I guess I'll thank myself too. Bye for now. And stay safe, everybody.